Ayanna, the girl who lit up a continent. Francis Otieno, Ayanna. The Girl Who Lit Up a Continent. Copyright 2025. Francis Otieno, all rights reserved. No part of this publication may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, electronic, mechanical, photocopying, recording, or otherwise, without the prior written permission of the author, except in the case of brief quotations embodied in critical articles or reviews. This is a work of fiction. Names, characters, organizations, and events are either products of the author's imagination or used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real institutions is purely coincidental. Cover design. Francis Otieno, self-published. For rights, permissions, or bulk orders, contact info francisotieno@gmail.com. Dedication to every girl who ever lit a candle during a blackout and dreamed of wiring the stars. To the builders, the believers, the breakers of silence, and to the continent that raised me, we are not broken. We are becoming. Francis Otieno, acknowledgements. No revolution is ever built alone. To the mothers in Eastlands, Kibra, Kisumu, and beyond, thank you for raising brilliance in hard places. To the teachers who saw more than marks, to the students who asked better questions, to the forgotten, the fearless, and the first, this story pulses with your courage. To the dreamers who code at midnight, weld in the dust, and garden on a small piece of land, you are the heartbeat of this book. To my early readers and champions, you watered the seed before anyone else saw a tree. To Zewadi, Kiptu, Amina, Wekesa, and all their real-world reflections, I hope you see yourselves in these pages, in every code written and every switch flipped. To my friends, my colleagues, my continent, you made this possible. You make possible happen. And to you, the reader, if this story sparked even a flicker of light in you, pass it on. Build something with it. We don't wait for change. We are the blueprint. Francis Otieno, 1P Chapter 1. Nairobi didn't whisper. It crackled, buzzed, coughed smoke into the sky like it was exhaling exhaustion from every cracked pavement and rusted rooftop. The air pulsed with the sound of hustlers hawking dreams and exhaust fumes. VRRRR of Boda Bodas. The gospel of street preachers blending with trap music bleeding from Madaris wrapped in graffiti and hope. Somewhere in the belly of Eastlands, between a collapsing estate wall and a kiosk with charred sausages sizzling in recycled oil, lived a girl named Ayanna. She was 11, the first time she counted all the nights the lights didn't come on. 27, in 1 month, each blackout marked with a red X on the calendar above their kitchen sink. A ritual, a quiet rebellion. Her mother, Mama Njeri, would chuckle, "We should buy candles in bulk and start a candle shop, Eki." But Ayanna heard the crack in her voice, the laugh that didn't reach the eyes. Their flat smelled of soap that never quite masked the scent of damp cement. The walls flaked like tired skin. The ceiling sagged slightly above the bathroom, like it too was weary of holding on. The rent kept climbing like it was chasing the clouds, and yet the house stayed stuck in place. Cracked tiles that whispered under bare feet, a tap that coughed instead of flowing. The kettle doubled as a bath water heater. The sink leaked like it was weeping. Water came on Tuesdays and Saturdays, if the estate pipes hadn't been stolen overnight. Buckets waited in neat rows by the gate, sentinels of scarcity. Every child in the neighborhood knew how to fill a jerrycan without spilling a drop. Electricity, when it came, was a flirtatious lover, flickering, teasing, unreliable. And when it vanished, Mama Njeri would mutter, it's those cartels again. Wanna control Stima, petrol." It was a running joke that even the moon had better attendance than Kenya Power. Ayanna didn't talk much, but she noticed everything. She noticed how her father's hands were always dry, cracked, and darkened with oil, the kind that clung to your skin in stories. He drove a Matatu named Blessed Ride, windshield cracked like a spider's web, blaring reggae and prayers in equal measure. He rarely smiled, except when Ayanna brought home a school drawing of a solar-powered city. 2P she noticed how her classmates talked about Wi-Fi passwords and what season of Stranger Things they were on, while she adjusted their old TV antenna with a wire hanger just to catch a grainy signal of Citizen TV. She noticed how her mother paused before opening every rent envelope, lips moving silently like a prayer, and how she folded the receipt like it might hurt less in smaller pieces. But Ayanna also noticed sunlight, how it slanted into their tiny balcony at exactly 9:12 a.m., bathing their potted sukuma in golden grace. How the evening sun turned their dusty courtyard into a painting, glowing, alive, defiant, as if the sun itself was saying, "I see you." She noticed how the light didn't ask for M-Pesa. It came without bills, without bribes, without passwords. And she wondered, if the sun gave its light freely, why were they still paying so much just to see at night? That thought clung to her, more stubborn than the dampness on their walls, more persistent than the darkness. That thought, she decided, wasn't just a question. It was a beginning. On one particular Tuesday, just after school, Ayanna stepped into the flat and felt it immediately. That heavy stillness that clung to the air when the power was out. The fan in the corner sat motionless, a plastic statue. The fridge hummed a death rattle, then went silent. The only light came from the window, streaking in like a half-hearted apology. Her little brother, Junior, was sprawled on the couch in his school uniform. Shirt untucked, sweat beading on his forehead as he swatted at invisible mosquitoes with a folded comic book. "Lights?" Ayanna asked, already knowing the answer. Mama didn't look up from peeling sukuma on the floor. "Gone again. Maybe tomorrow. Or maybe Christmas," she added dryly, her voice wearing a smile it didn't feel. Ayanna just nodded. No sigh, no groan, no tantrum. She was past that now. The dark had become an unwanted guest. They were too poor to evict. She kicked off her shoes, walked to the kitchen shelf, and pulled down a tin box where she kept odd scraps from her school science projects. Used batteries, copper wire, a broken 3P, a GE torch switch, the foil from old biscuit wrappers. To anyone else, it looked like trash. To Ayanna, it was potential. She opened her dog-eared science notebook and flipped to page 37, titled in her neat, blocky handwriting, "Alternative light sources, my ideas." Below it were sketches of solar panels made from bottle tops, circuits made from spoons, even a diagram of a sun catcher she dreamed up using a CD and mirror fragments. And then at the bottom, scrawled in thick pencil strokes and underlined twice, "Light should be free." She stared at those words for a moment, her finger tracing them like scripture. She didn't know exactly how, not yet, but something inside her sparked. Quiet, stubborn, unrelenting. If the world wouldn't give her light, she'd find a way to make her own. Later that night, the city simmered in silence, the kind only blackout evenings knew, soft, sticky, and full of ghosts. Junior snored softly on the lower bunk, legs splayed, his toy truck still in his grip. From the next room, Mama's voice floated through the thin walls, gentle whispers of prayer, part Kiswahili, part exhaustion, asking God for rent, for rest, for light. Ayanna crouched barefoot on the cracked cement balcony, knees to her chest, her fingers busy with wires and stubborn hope. Before her, on a flipped-over plastic basin, sat the heart of her little invention. A tiny solar panel ripped from an old calculator, some repurposed batteries wrapped in masking tape, and a weak LED light she'd saved from a discarded toy. She twisted the wires together, tongue poking slightly out the side of her mouth in concentration. A spark, a flicker, then darkness. She adjusted the foil reflector she'd shaped from biscuit wrappers, held her breath, and the light came alive. It was dim, fragile, flickering like it was afraid to exist. But it worked, and it was hers. She cupped it in her hands like a secret flame, the pale glow kissing her cheeks, casting shadows on the wall behind her like paper ghosts dancing. She could feel its warmth, not just from the bulb, but from what it meant. 4P a GE, a drop of defiance in a city drowning in dysfunction, a whisper of resistance against darkness that felt designed, a seed of light in a place that kept swallowing hope whole. Above her, a wealthy neighbor's generator coughed and growled in the distance, humming with the arrogance of the well-fed. Its artificial glare spilled across balconies like a taunt. But Ayanna ignored it. She held her little light up to the night sky, her eyes reflecting stars and stubbornness. One day, she whispered to the wind, "I'll build homes where no one lives in the dark." And high above Eastlands, the stars blinked, softly, slowly, as if they'd heard her, as if they believed her. And maybe, just maybe, the night did too. The day the blackout hit during exam week, it felt like the universe was mocking them. The bulb above Ayanna's desk sputtered once, like it was clearing its throat, then died with a soft pop. The silence that followed was instantly broken by a wave of noise. Pots clanging in frustration, a baby crying down the hall, radios clicking off mid-sentence, a mother yelling "Toka Hapo" in the stairwell, and then, as always, the mechanical growl of distant generators starting up, angry, greedy beasts chewing through diesel and silence. Ayanna didn't scream like the others. She didn't cuss. She didn't even flinch. She just shut her book slowly, placed her pen down, and leaned back in her chair with the stillness of someone too used to disappointment to waste fresh energy on it. She looked at the dead bulb overhead, its lifeless eye staring back at her. Of course, she whispered. Of course it would go now. Outside, the estate bristled and buzzed with collective exasperation. Laughs too loud, arguments over extension cables, the clatter of jerrycans being dragged for another night of cold baths. This wasn't new. This was Nairobi, where electricity was more myth than utility. It came and went like an unreliable lover, showing up late, leaving early, always with an excuse. The heat pressed in from all sides, thick and wet like it was trying to drown her slowly. Her shirt clung to her back. Dust danced in the dim air like tiny ghosts. 5p a GE, she rested her forehead on the textbook. Page 84, the same diagram of photosynthesis she'd read 6 times, and exhaled. Then, without a word, she reached under her bed and pulled out her secret weapon. A lantern, not from a shop, from her mind, from bits and scraps and stubbornness. A rusted tin can base, glued to a shard of mirror angled for reflection. A scavenged LED. Wires, bits of plastic casing, and most precious of all, a small solar panel she'd salvaged from a broken calculator back in March. She turned the switch. It flickered, then held, a weak, steady glow that was hers alone. Her old science teacher, Mr. Maloba, had once said during a heated class debate, "Kenyans innovate out of pain." Ayanna was starting to think that wasn't just a proverb. It was prophecy, blueprint, curse. She angled the light toward her notes. Diagrams sharpened in the soft glow. Photosynthesis, thermal conductivity, renewable sources. Her eyes skimmed the words, but her mind was somewhere else entirely. She was building again, not with wire this time, but with vision. She saw a building. No, felt it. A strange, beautiful building. Flat-roofed and covered with sleek solar panels like scales on a sun-kissed fish. Walls thick with smart insulation. Glass that filtered heat but let in light. Piping systems that pulled water up from boreholes. No water rationing needed. A biodigester that turned garbage into fuel. Balconies that didn't just overlook the street, but grew kale, mint, rosemary, tomatoes. Windows that opened on their own when the air grew too thick. Rooms that stored sunlight for the night. A home that fed you, lit you, protected you, not just from rain or thieves, but from the lies of a system that said people like her weren't supposed to dream. She grabbed a pen and scribbled fast in the margins of her science book, as if the vision might run away if she didn't catch it in time. A building that breathes. A building that gives. A building that doesn't lie. She underlined it twice, and just like that, Ayanna wasn't just studying science anymore. She was rewriting what shelter could mean. 6p a GE the next day at school, Ayanna walked through the gates with a quiet kind of pride. Head high, heart steady, her project cradled in a worn paper bag like it was sacred. The bag rustled with every step, awkward and lumpy. Kids pointed. Whispers followed her like shadows. Inside the bag, what looked to most like junk. A cracked jam jar, green with slimy algae. Tangled wires, rescued from old radio guts. A scorched metal plate, cut from an abandoned Jico. A phone battery with one corner duct taped. A tiny solar panel, no bigger than a matchbox, balanced like a crown on top. It jiggled as she walked, but she didn't care. To Ayanna, it wasn't junk. It was possibility. It was pain repurposed. By the time she slid into her seat, the stares had turned to smirks. Kip, too, her cheeky deskmate with a voice that never respected volume limits, leaned over with a grin. Is that a science experiment or a bomb? The others giggled. Ayanna didn't flinch. She gently placed the bag on the desk and pulled out part of her creation with both hands, setting it on her composition book like it was the final piece in a gallery. It's a backup energy generator, she said, matter of fact. It stores solar energy and converts algae waste into biogas. It's not perfect, but it works. Silence, the kind that bends time. Kiptu blinked. Wait, you're trying to power the future with math and pond scum? Ayanna turned to him, her voice soft but iron strong. Her eyes sparkled with the kind of light that doesn't come from bulbs. Exactly. And in that moment, before teachers arrived, before the day blurred into bells and books, something shifted. No thunder, no applause, just the hush that happens when genius stands tall in a world used to dismissing it. Because Ayanna wasn't just answering a science question. She was announcing her arrival. 7p a GE after assembly, as the class trickled back into the room, some still giggling about Kiptu's bomb joke, others already plotting how to copy homework before the bell. Mr. Maloba walked in. He was the kind of teacher who wore dusty shoes and carried a bag heavier than his salary. He taught science like it was sacred, but rarely smiled unless a student solved something he hadn't taught them. That was his love language, discovery. He moved past the first few rows, then paused, his eyes locked on the strange device sitting on Ayanna's desk, still glinting with quiet rebellion. He tilted his head, adjusted his glasses. "Who brought this?" Ayanna raised her hand slowly. The classroom stilled. "Mr." Maloba stepped closer. He didn't ask to touch it, just looked. The wires, the jar, the algae swirling like lazy galaxies, the metal plate carefully bolted down with bottle caps. Then his eyes flicked to Ayanna's face. "Tell me what it does," he said, not as a challenge but as a request, like a master craftsman asking a young blacksmith to explain her blade. Ayanna sat straighter. "It collects solar power. The algae produce biogas, which gets filtered and stored. The light works even when the main power is off, and it can purify water slowly if you use charcoal layers." Mr. Maloba blinked. Once, twice. He didn't smile. He didn't clap. He did something rarer. He nodded. Then he turned to the class, voice firm. "Class, I want you all to listen carefully. Silence. This is not junk. This is not magic. This is science. Real science. Born from frustration. Built from imagination. And powered by questions too many adults stopped asking." He turned back to Ayanna. 8P a GE, where did you learn to do this?" Ayanna hesitated. "Then, page 37 of my science book. And the blackout last Tuesday." "Mr." Maloba let out the faintest breath, part laugh, part prayer. He looked at her again, like someone seeing the first spark of a fire he knew would burn far beyond the school gates. "I hope," he said quietly, "you're ready for the science fair." Ayanna's heart fluttered, not from nerves, from knowing, finally, someone had seen the blueprint hidden in her bones. And from that moment on, Mr. Maloba stopped treating her like just another pupil. He started treating her like a peer. 9P a GE Chapter 2, the school science fair took place in the multipurpose hall, a dusty echo chamber that smelled of chalk, old hymn books, and warm plastic chairs. During the week, it was a forgotten room with peeling paint and wobbly benches. On Sundays, it transformed into a chapel, voices raised in song to ceilings that still leaked when it rained. Today, it was buzzing with projects. There were baking soda volcanoes bubbling with too much vinegar, windmill models made from ice cream sticks, toy cars taped together with visible hope and AA batteries. Tables creaked under cardboard, tinfoil, and leftover dreams from last year's fair. Ayanna stood near the back, by a wooden table that had lost one leg and been patched with bricks. Her project looked out of place, too technical, too serious, too alive. It was a miniature apartment complex. Walls built from cut cereal boxes, roofs made of plastic sheeting, tiny wires trailing like veins. On each balcony were strips of dried herbs and green felt patches for vegetables. She had modeled the solar panels out of broken CD shards. A salvaged USB fan poked out from a hole she'd labeled air circulation. And then she plugged it in. Her hands moved with quiet confidence. Wire here, clip there. The jam jar lantern lit up first, casting a glow so clean and soft it startled the kids beside her. Then slowly, the rest followed. A tiny water chamber bubbled, a gas tube hissed faintly, the fan buzzed awake. It was a city block in miniature, self-sustaining, self-respecting, self-made. The light shone brighter than the flickering overhead bulbs in the hall. Heads turned, silence spread like ripples in a still pond. The judges, 2 local engineers with oil-stained fingernails, and 1 city council official with a clipboard too clean for this place, drifted over, drawn in by the glow. They circled the model like pilgrims before an altar. 10P a GE1 leaned in, his brow furrowed in disbelief. "You did this with estate junk?" Ayanna nodded. "Yes, because that's all we had." Another, the younger engineer, pointed at the jar glowing softly with algae inside. "What does it do?" Ayanna straightened. "It lights up. It purifies water. It filters gas from organic waste. After setup, it runs itself." The judges exchanged a look. This wasn't a child's project. It was a blueprint, a challenge. The oldest judge, gray-bearded, eyes sharp like they'd seen both revolution and resignation, stepped closer. "What do you call it?" Ayanna hesitated. Her eyes flicked to her model, then to the lantern, then to the judges, and finally to the kids in the room staring with wide-eyed wonder. And then she whispered, almost to herself but just loud enough, "A home with dignity." The words hung there. No one laughed. No one clapped. They just stood quietly, in the soft hum of invention and impossible hope. And that's when everything changed. The announcement came as the last bench screeched back into place, and the final volcano was quietly drained into a basin. Kids buzzed in huddles, swapping leftover sweets and half-baked theories about who would win. Then came the soft tap of the mic, followed by the voice that always made the hall fall still. Mrs. Njoki, firm, focused, fearsome when needed. But today, something in her tone had changed. "A moment, please," she said, her heels clicking once as she moved to center stage. "Before we close, we have a special commendation." 11P a G.E. Ayanna, still packing up her project with the same care she used to handle her mother's glass spice jars, froze. She didn't lift her head. Not yet. Beside Mrs. Njoki stood the oldest judge, the one with grease under his fingernails and galaxies in his eyes. He looked like he'd built half the town's power lines and torn down twice as many. "We've seen a lot today," he began, squinting into the crowd. "But one project didn't just impress us. It moved us. It reminded us what innovation actually means, solving real problems with what's at hand. Dignity built from debris." He nodded to Mrs. Njoki, who held up a crisp manila envelope like it contained something sacred. "Ayanna," she said, voice unwavering. "Please come forward." There it was, her name, like thunder in a dry sky. The room quieted. Some kids turned. A few jaws dropped. Ayanna stood, knees shaky, heart thudding like a loose drum. She walked to the front, past faces that had never really seen her until now. Mrs. Njoki handed her the envelope and spoke into the mic again. "This is your regional ticket to the National Science Fair in Kisumu next month. You've earned it not just with intelligence, but with imagination, heart, and resourcefulness." The judge leaned in, adding, "And mentorship. Travel, full support. We're going to make sure you get there, and that your project grows with you." Ayanna took the envelope with both hands. Still no smile. Not yet. Not until she saw the faces in the crowd. The boy who always teased her mouth open in awe, the girl who once asked if girls could even do engineering, the teacher who used to look right past her when calling for bright minds. Now, they saw it too. The light she carried, the one that had lit that jar. A few pupils clapped, then more, and then applause like rainfall after a drought. Mrs. Njoki stepped aside, pride simmering beneath her steady expression. She touched Ayanna's shoulder gently. "Go show them what our school can do." 12P a G.E. Ayanna nodded. She wasn't just holding an envelope. She was holding proof. Proof that brilliance doesn't ask for permission. It only needs space. And in that leaky, echoing hall, a girl from the back of the room had just found hers. The afternoon sun was lazy now, softening into that golden Nairobi glow that made everything, trash piles, hanging laundry, tin rooftops, look strangely beautiful. Ayanna walked with the envelope clutched to her chest, her project packed tight in a jerrycan box swinging from her shoulder. The estate was alive with its usual chorus. Radios blaring mismatched tunes, Mama Mbogas arguing about sukuma weights, and little kids chasing tires like Olympic medals. But today she felt separate. Not above it, not beyond it. Just tilted, like her feet were walking on the same ground, but her soul had started floating a few inches higher. She turned the corner near the rusted gate with the missing latch. And there he was, Junior, sitting on an upturned bucket, chewing on a stolen mango like it held the secrets of the universe. "Umachelwa," he shouted, grinning, juice dripping from his chin. "Did your bomb explode and burn the school?" Ayanna didn't say a word. She just smiled and held out the envelope like it was a trophy. Junior blinked, "Nai nini hiyo." Before she could answer, the door creaked open. Mama Njeri stepped out, wiping her hands on a faded liso, her face drawn with the tired lines of a woman who knew too much about making ends meet. She squinted. "Ayanna, Mbona Umabeba Yuzo Yasiri." Ayanna handed her the envelope. Silent, glowing from the inside out, Mama opened it with careful fingers, the kind that knew how to prepare sukuma wiki without wasting a sliver. Her eyes scanned the letter, once, twice. Then she lowered it slowly. "Wait," she said. "You're going to Kisumu?" Ayanna nodded. "Regionals. I won." 13P a G.E. The words didn't land all at once. They trickled in, soft and staggering. Mama Njeri sat down on the doorstep like her knees gave out. You are going to represent this school. This estate," Junior whooped. We're famous now. I'm telling everyone." He dashed off barefoot, screaming Ayanna's name like it was a football chant. Mama Njeri just stared. Her eyes welled, not loud tears, but the kind that gather when pride finally pushes past years of scraping by. She pulled Ayanna close, held her tight, the way you hold both a miracle and the fear of it slipping away. "You've done something," she whispered. "Something big." Ayanna smiled into her mother's shoulder. "Not big, Mama, just the beginning." Ayanna heard the familiar Baba's footsteps on the cracked stairwell. Heavy, purposeful, dust on his boots, tiredness clinging to his shoulders like another passenger he couldn't shake off. She was still in her school uniform, sitting on the low stoop with her project beside her, waiting. The door creaked open. Baba stepped in, eyes sunken from a day dodging traffic and chasing fares, his shirt stained with sweat and diesel fumes. He paused when he saw her, then noticed the box, and the look in her eyes. Yumi haribu nini sasa? He asked with mock sternness, peeling off his cap and tossing it onto the stool. You've got that guilty in a smart way face. Ayanna stood. She didn't say anything at first, just handed him the letter. He took it, sighing, probably expecting another school fee balance, warning, or PTA summons. But then his eyes moved left, then right, then froze on the words. National Science Fair, Kisumu selected participant. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. 14p a GE, and then came his voice. Low, stunned, like a man trying to understand how his daughter had just rerouted the laws of gravity. Wiu endio ulafanya hiai. Ayanna nodded. Anin de Kisumu. Yes, Baba. Na yulian de hiai kiru yot peki yako. Yes, with scraps, and an old USB fan. He didn't speak for a long moment, just looked at the model beside her. The glowing jar, the tangled wires, the dream wrapped in cereal boxes. Then, without warning, he laughed. A deep, booming laugh that echoed into the hallway. He clapped once, then twice. Aha, he shouted. That's my girl, Emsichana Wa Power. He picked up the model like it was a sacred object, turning it in his grease-stained hands. Do you know what you've done, Ayanna? You've built something, not just this your name. Your name is walking ahead of you now. It's clearing the road. Mama and Jerry watched from the kitchen doorway, drying her hands on her liso, quietly smiling. Then Baba added, grinning like a man who'd just outrun a traffic cop. Tomorrow, I'll drive you to school myself. Let those teachers see which Mataru brings geniuses. And for the first time that long day, his shoulders dropped, not from fatigue, but relief. Because in a world that had taught him to survive, his daughter was teaching them how to thrive. Later that night, when the house had settled into its usual lull, Junior snoring into his pillow, Mama humming softly as she folded clothes in the dim hallway light, Baba flipping through static-filled radio stations. Ayanna slipped out the back door, climbed the narrow stairs 2 at a time, and pushed open the rusted metal hatch to the rooftop. It groaned like it always did, complaining softly at being disturbed. Up there, Nairobi breathed differently. Slower, the chaos quieted, replaced by distant Mataru horns and the hush of wind curling through clotheslines. She crossed the rooftop 15p a GE barefoot, dodging a bucket collecting rainwater and an old bicycle frame leaning like an elder in thought. She found her spot, a slab of concrete near the edge where someone had once drawn a hopscotch grid in chalk. It was faded now, but she liked that. Things that fade but stay felt honest. Above her, the sky sprawled open, vast and velvet, dusted with the stars Nairobi hadn't completely swallowed. And somewhere far off, a plane blinked red and white, gliding toward a future she could almost reach. She sat cross-legged, her back straight, eyes lifted, and just breathed. The wind brushed her braids. The night held her gently. She thought about the way the judge had looked at her project, not with pity, but with possibility. The way her mama's voice had cracked just slightly when she read the letter. The way Baba had held her model like it was made of glass and hope. She smiled, small but true. I made something that lives, she whispered into the dark. I made something that matters. And maybe that was the real win. Not the trip, not the applause, but this rooftop, this peace, this knowing that even in a world that forgets girls like her, she had left a mark, lit a jar with algae and courage, wired hope into cardboard, built a home with dignity. And now she was building the future, one balcony at a time. The next day at first, nothing changed. 16p a GE, the bell still screeched at 8:00 a.m. The chalk still squeaked on cracked blackboards. The toilet still smelled like a dare no one wanted to accept. But then, people started whispering differently. Did you hear? That girl from 7B, the one who built light from algae, that's Ayanna. She's going to Kisumu. Kisumu Bana. Suddenly, her name held weight. Not celebrity, not fame, but respect, the quiet kind. The kind that makes people sit up straighter when you walk past. The kind that draws eyes to your hands, your ideas, your silence. In the staff room, Mr. Maloba became a kind of legend too. You see what your girl did? Another teacher asked, half joking. She's not my girl, he'd reply. Then softer, she's the future's. The school head teacher, Mrs. Njoki, known for her sharp heels and sharper tongue, called an impromptu assembly. She stood on the cracked concrete stage with Ayanna beside her, clutching her model in both hands like a sacred artifact. "This is what happens when we stop treating science like theory," she said, "and start treating it like survival." That same week, the science club, once two boys who just wanted to blow things up with vinegar and baking soda, ballooned. Girls joined, lots of them. A shy grade 4 girl named Zuleka brought in a broken fan blade and said she wanted to build a windmill. A boy named Brian found old magnets and tried to make a water pump spin without fuel. They failed mostly, but they failed loudly. Proudly, together, Ayanna became an accidental mentor. She didn't want the spotlight, but it followed her like her own shadow. Mr. Maloba started leaving notes in her locker, names of engineers to look up, sketches of microgrid systems, questions like, how would this work in Turkana? The school's computer lab, once always locked unless the ministry sent inspectors, was opened every Wednesday afternoon for Innovation Hour. The guard grumbled, but he opened it anyway. A mural appeared near the canteen one morning, spray-painted in navy blue and solar yellow. It showed a hand holding a glowing jar, light bursting out like stars. Underneath, someone had written in block letters, 17p a GE, let there be light. Ayanna was here. She didn't write it, but she smiled every time she passed. Even Kiptu, once the loudmouth, started asking real questions. He asked her how algae photosynthesized, asked her how to insulate wires, asked her what it felt like to win. She looked at him, tilted her head, and said, "I didn't win. I just got started." And that was the biggest shift of all at Ayanna's school. For the first time in a long time, pupils weren't just trying to pass. They were trying to build. 18p a GE Chapter 3, the road to Kisumu was long. But for Ayanna, it felt like a golden runway. She sat by the window of the crowded school bus, her forehead pressed lightly to the cool glass, the rhythmic rattle beneath her feet syncing with the soft thud of her heartbeat. In her lap, her notebook lay open, pages blooming with sketches, diagrams of apartment rooftops covered in solar panels, not just drawings, declarations, a manifesto of what could be. Outside, the landscape unrolled like a dream, whispered in Kiswahili. They passed sleepy towns, where schoolchildren waved with ink-stained fingers. Rows of acacia trees stood like wise old guardians beside the highway. Sugarcane fields shimmered under the sun, bending in the breeze like they knew something about survival. Here, even the shops told stories, hand-painted signs in bold, untrained brushstrokes. Divine Favor Barbershop, Jehovah Jireh Electronics. Each name felt like a prayer carved in desperation and hope. Each building a declaration that even here, in the rust, in the dust, people believed in better. And with every kilometer, Ayanna felt herself stretching, leaving Eastlands behind, not in body, but in mind. Her world was expanding, no longer just a small apartment with a leaky sink, no longer just one estate, one blackout, one recycled battery. It was Kenya, Africa, maybe even more. She traced her finger across her sketches, then paused. What if the whole continent could live differently? What if no one had to pay for light again? What if waste stopped being shameful and became power? What if every child could open their window at night and see, not shadows, but safety? The thought made her smile, a wide, trembling smile that reached all the way to her toes. 19p a GE then, just as quickly, it made her shiver. Because that kind of dream, it wasn't small, it didn't fit neatly into a classroom project or a single science fair. It was dangerous in its boldness, disruptive, a threat to the systems that profited from silence and suffering. Ayanna clenched her pencil tighter. Her seatmate, Zuleka, one of the grade 4s from the science club, leaned over and whispered, "What are you thinking about?" Ayanna turned her notebook so Zuleka could see the page. "I'm thinking," she said softly, "about how to light up a continent without burning it down." Zuleka stared at the sketch, then nodded slow. "You're not normal." "Good," Ayanna said. And the bus kept rolling, toward Kisumu, toward the lake, toward something she didn't have words for yet. But it felt like destiny, with engine grease on its hands. The National Science Fair was held at Mazino University, its leafy campus buzzing with ambition, nerves, and the crackle of possibility. Inside the exhibition hall, it felt less like a fair and more like a launch pad. The air was sharp with electricity, not from sockets but from vision. Banners fluttered, screens blinked, learners wheeled in robots with blinking eyes and articulated limbs. There were AI irrigation systems, handcrafted drones, a solar-powered oven shaped like a satellite dish, and a boy from Nakuru showing off a brickmaking machine that turned discarded plastics into load-bearing blocks. He had sponsors already. Ayanna stood by her corner table near the back wall, behind a display crafted with more hope than polish. Her upgraded prototype sat proudly. Project Nyumbani 2.0, a self-sustaining apartment in miniature, sculpted from repurposed wood, soda bottles, tin scraps, and the guts of old electronics. This version had a tiny vertical wind turbine, spinning lazily from the hall's ceiling fan draft, a biodigester model that bubbled faintly with green-tinted water, a saltwater-powered 20p a GE hydrogen fuel cell hooked to LED bulbs, everything mounted with care, taped wires hidden under folded insulation paper. Beside the base, a homemade placard read, "Water, light, gas, freedom, built from broken things." Ayanna stood beside it, her back straight, her eyes tracking the crowd. For the first hour, almost no one stopped. A few glanced politely. Some nodded like they were being kind. Most moved on to the exhibits with sleeker finishes. Projects framed in acrylic glass, tables covered in tablet screens and QR codes that linked to pitch decks and Instagram pages. One boy's model even had laser pointers guiding the viewer's eye. Ayanna swallowed hard and adjusted her turbine's angle. Then the solar panel's tilt. Then the cardboard label on the biodigester. Nothing. A familiar, sinking feeling rose in her chest. Invisible again. Just another Nairobi girl with ash under her fingernails and recycled dreams. She looked down at her hands. Ink-stained, calloused, fingers still nicked from the blade she'd used to cut wire 2 nights ago. Then a voice, low, firm, and crackling with something dangerous. "That's brilliant." Ayanna turned, startled. A tall woman in a dark blue hijab stood before the display. She wore no makeup. Her expression wasn't soft or condescending. It was sharp, focused. She didn't glance. She studied. "This apartment system, it's completely off-grid." Ayanna cleared her throat. "Yes, solar-powered primary, backup hydrogen fuel cell from saltwater electrolysis, rainwater harvesting, kitchen waste goes into the biogas digester, filters built from charcoal ash and cloth, and the power lines run through capacitor buffers to reduce surges." The woman squinted slightly, then nodded. "Heat recycling, 21p a GE, next version," Ayanna said quickly. "With passive cooling too. I'm still modeling the airflow." The woman tapped her pen against her clipboard. "And you built this. With what?" Ayanna gave a half smile. "Estate leftovers. My mum's blue bin tins. Broken flashlights from the kiosk guy. I tore apart a dead radio for the rectifier bridge. I made the gas valve from a biro pen spring and plastic tubing." The woman's lips curled into something between a smirk and a revelation. She stepped closer. "You know what this is?" she asked quietly. Ayanna blinked, shook her head. The woman leaned in. "This is disruption. Real disruption. Not the buzzword kind. The kind that scares companies and saves lives." Ayanna stared, stunned. No one had ever said that about her work. Not out loud. The woman straightened and began scribbling notes on her clipboard. Vast, focused. Then she was gone, her footsteps slicing through the crowd like a blade through mist. Ayanna stood frozen. She looked at her model. Still the same. Still taped and handmade, and humming softly with recycled power. But suddenly, it didn't look like a school project. It looked like a seed, and the world was tilting toward spring. Later that afternoon, the echoing hum of the exhibition hall dimmed. Conversations died down. Even the robot stopped whirring. A hush fell over the crowd, like mist descending over morning fields. The judges took the stage, 3 of them in smart blazers, one holding a golden envelope like it was sacred. Behind them, a banner read, National Youth Science and Innovation Fair, Kisumu Chapter 22, a GE. Ayanna stood at the edge of the crowd, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Her prototype sat behind her like a loyal friend. Humble, humming, glowing faintly with filtered energy. "Third place," the lead judge announced, "goes to the plastic brick recycling machine from Nakuru." Applause. The boy jumped up, grinning, flashing a peace sign. Cameras clicked. His teammates tapped his back. "Second place," the judge continued, "the autonomous water-purifying drone from Mombasa." Another burst of claps. A girl in braids ran to the stage, almost tripping over her shoelaces, laughing breathlessly. A pause. The judge looked down at the card, then back up at the crowd. And first place, Project Nyumbani 2.0 by Ayanna and Jerry from Nairobi. For half a second, no sound came. Then a roar. The applause rose like a storm. Chairs scraped. Teachers whooped. Someone banged a desk, but Ayanna barely heard it. The sound moved around her like waves, crashing somewhere distant. Her vision blurred. She didn't move. Couldn't. Her fingers trembled, not from nerves, but from something deeper, something older, a pressure that had been building for weeks in the cracks of ceilings, in the silence after blackouts, in every sigh her mother ever exhaled over rent receipts and broken taps. This wasn't just a prize. It wasn't just a medal or a title or a certificate stamped with ministry logos. It was proof that a girl from Eastlands could bring light, not just survive the dark. Proof that estate junk could become the blueprint of the future. Proof that dignity wasn't something you had to be born into. It could be built. She walked to the stage slowly, as if the floor might crumble beneath her. 23p a GE as she accepted the trophy. Plastic, gold-painted, glinting under LED lights. Her eyes scanned the crowd. Zulika was on a chair, pumping her fist in the air. A grade 6 boy from her school's science club stood open-mouthed, halfway through a soda. Even one of the university custodians was clapping, eyes misty. And at the back of the hall, barely visible through the crowd, stood the woman in the hijab. She didn't wave. She just nodded, once solemn and proud. Ayanna nodded back, tears stinging her eyes but not falling. The microphone was offered to her. The room stilled again. She stepped forward, leaned in, and simply said, "Let this be the start, not the peak," then stepped back. No fanfare, no speech, just purpose, because Ayanna and Jerry hadn't come to win. She'd come to wake the future up. After the ceremony, as students celebrated with Fanta bottles and sun-warmed cupcakes, and the judges took selfies with winners under the Innovation Lives Here banner, Ayanna stood quietly by her model, wrapping wires back into her bag. That's when she saw her again, the tall woman in the hijab, walking toward her with the calm certainty of someone used to changing lives. She didn't ask for small talk. "I work with the African Institute of Sustainable Engineering," she said, offering a card printed in clean, minimalist font. "We run mentorships, advanced programs, scholarships. I'd like to nominate you." Ayanna blinked, stunned. The words felt unreal, like they had come from the pages of her notebook instead of the real world. "Why me?" she asked softly, almost afraid the offer would vanish if she said it too loud. 24p a GE. The woman didn't smile right away. Instead, she looked Ayanna straight in the eye, as if searching for something there, something she recognized, maybe something she had once been. Then she said, quietly and firmly, "Because you didn't wait for permission to build the future." And that was it. Not a compliment, a confirmation. Ayanna looked down at the card, then at her own hands, still smudged with grease and marker ink, the kind of hands that fix things, that imagined, built, broke, rebuilt. For the first time, she felt it settle deep in her chest, not just hope, but arrival. She nodded, not shyly, not even proudly, just like someone stepping into who they were always meant to be. "Okay," she said, "I'm ready." That night, the bus back to Nairobi hummed like a lullaby, winding through moonlit hills and silent towns. Most students had dozed off, their heads lolling against windows or backpacks. But Ayanna sat wide awake by the window, her trophy tucked between her feet, the business card from the African Institute clenched gently in her hand. Outside, the stars looked closer than ever, scattered across the sky like promises waiting to be believed. She opened her notebook, not to sketch, just to stare at the blank page. For once, she wasn't rushing to fill it. She let the silence stretch, let her mind breathe. She was still replaying the moment in her mind. "Because you didn't wait for permission to build the future." Those words didn't just sit in her head, they echoed in her bones, like a drumbeat she could march to. Her thoughts wandered home. 25p a GE, she pictured Junior, probably asleep on the couch under his Spider-Man blanket, waiting for her like a soldier waits for orders. And Mama and Jerry, still struggling to get some sleep because her sweet daughter is not home yet. But for Baba, his eyes and ears are outside, waiting for any sign of arrival. She tucked the card into her notebook, leaned back, and pulled her hoodie tighter. She closed her eyes and leaned her forehead against the cool glass. Nairobi still lay hours away. But tonight, the road felt shorter. Not because the destination had changed, but because she had. Because now, Ayanna and Jerry wasn't just returning home. She was returning with blueprints, with a vision, a new language, a sense of direction, so sharp it felt like gravity had shifted. Outside, the night rolled on. Inside the bus, a girl with calloused hands and a burning dream whispered to herself, "I'll light up every shadow we come from. Watch me." And somewhere far ahead, Nairobi waited, no longer just a city, but a canvas. It was just past 4, 8:30 a.m. when the bus hissed to a stop outside the dusty junction near Umoja. The city hadn't yet stirred. The sky was the color of wet charcoal. No horns, no shouting, no vendors calling for customers. Just the quiet shuffle of bags and tired footsteps as a few students clambered off and disappeared into the shadows of their neighborhoods. Ayanna stepped down last, her trophy in one hand, her backpack slung across the other. The wind carried that unmistakable Nairobi scent. Smoke, dew, the metallic promise of another day. The streetlights flickered uncertainly, like they, too, were rubbing sleep from their eyes. Their flat was just a 10-minute walk away. She padded softly up the staircase, careful not to let her school shoes clap too loud on the steps. She reached their door, and as she opens it, she was welcomed by the smell of boiled tea leaves and motor oil. 26p a GE inside. It was still and dim. Junior was curled up on the couch, hugging his blanket tight, mouth open in a soft snore. Mama and Jerry's bedroom door was closed, a faint whisper of gospel music leaking from her charger radio inside. But in the kitchen, the light was on. Baba sat at the table, sipping tea in his faded jumper, his hands already grease-stained from prepping his tools. His eyes met Ayanna's and widened just slightly. "You Marudi?" he asked, voice low but steady. "You're back." She nodded. He glanced at the trophy, said nothing at first, then "So Nairobi is still safe." Ayanna grinned. "Safe enough to build in." He chuckled quietly, then stood, walked over and took the trophy from her hand, turning it slowly in the dim light. His face softened, not shocked, just proud in that quiet, old-school way. "Your mother will cry," he said. Ayanna smiled. "I hope so." He handed it back gently, then reached for his flask. "I was making strong tea. Enough for one more." They sat at the table, just the two of them. No speeches, no loud applause, just the clink of mugs and the warmth of tea as the first whispers of dawn touched the window. And for a moment, in that tiny kitchen with its cracked tile and flickering bulb, the world felt whole. Ayanna sipped, sighed, and said, "Baba, this is just the beginning." He nodded slowly, eyes on hers. "I know Mtoto Wangu, and I'll be driving people through the city, telling them, my daughter lit it first." The tea was still warm when Mama and Jerry woke. 27p a GE, she stepped into the kitchen in her old liso, rubbing sleep from her eyes, and froze. There sat Ayanna and Baba, side by side like co-conspirators, a golden trophy glinting between them. "Why?" Mama gasped, hand flying to her chest. "You Marudi, I didn't even hear." But before Ayanna could stand, Mama was already across the room, arms wrapped tight around her, tears soaking into the collar of her hoodie. Junior stumbled out next, hair wild, still half asleep, until he saw the trophy and snapped awake like a switch. "You won! You won!" He grabbed it with both hands and lifted it like a World Cup. Nyumbani FC Imechukua. Laughter spilled across their cramped kitchen like sunshine pouring through cracked blinds. That morning, Ayanna didn't unpack her clothes, just her story. Over tea, over mandazis, over the soft humming of a city slowly waking, she told them everything. The national fair, the engineer, the scholarship offer. When the news finally reached the school, it didn't just spread, it bloomed. By the end of that week, Ayanna's photo was stapled to the dusty staff room notice board, captioned, "Ayanna and Jerry are light. Our pride." Weeks became months, months became years. Mrs. Njoki, the head teacher, started every Monday assembly with updates on our young engineer. Grade 9 learners whispered her name like it was a cheat code. Even Kiptu, now taller and louder, walked a little straighter around her, casually telling anyone who'd listen, "I always knew she'd win, by the way." But Ayanna stayed grounded. Because light, she knew, wasn't just about brightness. It was about consistency. She kept sketching, kept upgrading her models, kept dreaming. Her notebooks now carried version numbers, Nyumbani 2, 3-2, 4-2, 9. When she wasn't helping Junior with his math, or helping Mama chop Sukuma wiki, she was teaching classmates how to build simple solar kits from wires and bottle caps. She became, quietly, a kind of legend, not for how loud she was, but for how steady. By the time grade 9 rolled around, Ayanna was ready. 28p a GE, not just academically, but spiritually. Her mind was sharp, but her vision, wider than ever. The school compound felt smaller now, not in a bad way, in the way that a bird feels the nest before its first long flight. She sat for the KJC with calm in her chest. Not arrogance, not fear, just purpose. On the day of the science practical, the sky threatened rain, but Ayanna's lantern, now using a banana peel bio battery, glowed without hesitation, a beacon in a room full of trembling hands. After her final paper, she walked out of the exam room not with a fist pump, but a soft smile, the kind that says, "I'm ready." She passed by the water tank where kids usually gathered to gossip, touched the wall where she'd once scribbled, "Light should be free," and made her way home. Mama was waiting with Ugali. Junior had decorated the living room with scrap paper stars. Baba came in late, dusty and tired, but grinning. "You finished?" he asked. Ayanna nodded. He held out a small box. Inside, a screwdriver set and a digital multimeter. "A girl building the future needs tools," he said simply. Ayanna didn't cry. She just gripped the box tight, heart loud in her chest. Because this wasn't the end of a chapter. It was the sound of wings unfolding. The day after her last KJC paper, Ayanna felt like she was floating, untethered, uncertain, but light. The exam hall was behind her, the future ahead, but no roadmap in between. Eastland was still Eastland's. Clotheslines sagged, water taps gasped. Mama still prepared Sukuma Wiki to be sold in the evening, and Baba still left before sunrise in his Mataru jacket, thermos in hand. Life didn't pause just because Ayanna had finished school. Yet something had shifted. She spent most of her days helping Mama cook, tutoring Junior on fractions, and sketching, always sketching. Her old project box grew fatter with wires, notes, and new questions. What if you built homes like ecosystems? What if the sun could pay your rent? 29p a GE. Then one hot afternoon, as she stirred ugali in a dented sufuria, the knock came. 3 soft raps, a beat of hesitation, then a force. Mama wiped her hands on her chitinge and opened the door. Outside stood Mrs. Njoki, her former head teacher, flanked by a woman in a navy blazer holding a brown envelope. "Good afternoon, Mama Njeri. Is Ayanna home?" Ayanna peeked from the kitchen, unsure whether to run or hide. The woman smiled. "My name is Miriam Otieno. I'm with the African Institute of Sustainable Engineering. We partner with Ridgeview Girls Academy to support top-performing girls in science and innovation." Ayanna stepped forward slowly, the name of the institute sounding familiar. The woman handed her the envelope. "Your results were exceptional, but it wasn't just your grades. One of us saw what you built. Your project, Nyumbani, was reviewed by a panel at the institute. And your story, it reached the scholarship board. We'd like to offer you a full ride. Tuition, boarding, uniform, supplies, the works." The envelope trembled in Ayanna's hands. Mama Njeri gasped, hand flying to her mouth. Junior whooped and started dancing with a plastic spoon. Ayanna just stared at the letter inside. Her name, Ayanna Njeri, written in neat official font. This was real. She looked up, eyes wide, voice barely above a whisper. "You mean, I'm going to Ridgeview?" The woman grinned. "You didn't just pass, Ayanna. You turned on a light we couldn't ignore." Baba came home that evening to find the entire estate gathered outside their flat, cheering. Someone brought soda, someone else lit a paraffin lamp and held it up like a trophy. And as the sky darkened and the city flickered with its usual patchwork of shadows, Ayanna sat on the steps, letter still in hand. Her story had changed, not overnight, not by luck, but by light. 30p a GE her own, 31p a GE Chapter 4, they called it Ridgeview Girls Academy. But to Ayanna, it looked more like a resort than a school. The gate alone stood like a border to another world, tall, silver, guarded, with a digital scanner that blinked blue every time a student walked through. Beyond it, stone buildings rose in quiet confidence, cloaked in ivy like they were trying to blend into perfection. The lawns were lush and manicured, trimmed so precisely they looked like they had barbers on payroll. Pathways curved like poetry between trees she only knew from textbooks. Jacaranda, bottle brush, frangipani. The dormitories, something out of a dream. Each girl got her own locker. There was hot water in the showers, proper plumbing that didn't gurgle like a dying thing, Wi-Fi that actually worked, even the windows closed without a fight. The cafeteria served food on trays, not tin plates. There were salad options. Salad, and the library. Oh, the library. It smelled like fresh varnish and whispered ambition. Floor-to-ceiling shelves. A 3D printer corner. Glass study pods with noise-canceling doors. Ayanna ran her fingers over the spines of thick engineering books, each one a silent promise. It was everything she had once dreamt of, everything she had wanted. And yet, her first night in Dorm C, Ayanna sat stiffly on the edge of her assigned bed. A real bed, not a sponge slab with springs poking through. The sheets smelled of lavender detergent. There was a lamp by her bedside that actually worked, with a USB port. A small potted plant sat on the windowsill, just for aesthetic. The silence was suffocating. No Matadus growling past unbroken tarmac. No distant hum of a neighbor's illegal generator. No Mama Njeri singing softly as she stirred Sukuma in the kitchen. No junior sleep-talking about superheroes. 32 PAGE, just the quiet hum of luxury. Ayanna lay back and stared at the ceiling, her chest tightening. She missed the chaos of Eastlands, missed the gospel station on the neighbor's radio, missed the smell of candle, missed the grit, the truth, the fight. Here everything was clean, but sterile, beautiful but distant, designed but not earned. Her doormate, a girl with braids threaded in gold beads, was already asleep in her crisp Ridgeview pajamas. Ayanna turned off her lamp, pulled the blanket to her chin, and whispered into the dark, "I'll learn everything, but I won't forget where I came from." In that moment, it wasn't guilt she felt, it was responsibility. Because in a world that worked, she knew her people were still navigating broken taps, fake promises, and blackout nights, and someone had to bring the light back home. By day, Ridgeview sparkled like a place that had never known struggle. Students drifted through sunlit corridors in perfectly ironed uniforms, their conversations filled with words like blockchain, Elan, and Ivy League. They spoke in fast, fluid English, effortless, polished, sprinkled with inside jokes from international cartoons and vacations to Santorini. Some had flown on planes before they could spell turbulence. Others coded like they were born inside motherboards. One girl, Layla, casually mentioned that her father ran a climate tech startup in Dubai. Another, Vanessa, with her sleek bob and designer pens, talked about how their backup Tesla battery powered their whole Runda mansion during the last blackout, which was tragic, by the way. We couldn't heat the pool. Ayanna mostly listened. She watched how they moved, how they dropped names of gadgets and gurus. She wrote down words she didn't know in a secret list. Quantum router, API, carbon arbitrage. Not to feel small, but to prepare. 33 PAGE, she didn't speak much. But when she did, the room always paused. It happened during one physics double. Mr. Mwangi, the teacher with sharp suits and a sharper mind, was talking about national energy demands. How the grid buckled during peak hours. How urban sprawl stressed transformer networks. Most of the class scribbled dutiful notes or yawned behind polished nails. Then Ayanna raised her hand. Wouldn't it make sense to offset that by pairing the battery array with a fuel cell system? She asked, her voice clear but calm, especially if you can extract green hydrogen from gray water using electrolysis. Silence, like the wind, had been punched out of the room. Even Mr. Mwangi blinked, like she'd spoken an alien dialect. Then Vanessa turned slowly in her chair, eyebrows arched like weapons. "You learned that where?" Tick-tock, laughter rippled, but Ayanna didn't blink, didn't stammer. She held Vanessa's gaze with that quiet steel she'd carried since Eastlands. "No," she said evenly. From living without power, the room froze, then shifted, slightly, imperceptibly, but something cracked, just a little, in the golden shell of Ridgeview's perfect world. The hardest part of Ridgeview wasn't the syllabus. It was the script, the unwritten rules of who belonged and who didn't. At Ridgeview, bright and rich, danced so closely it was hard to tell where one ended and the other began. Girls who aced calculus also flew business class. The ones quoting Descartes also compared Louis Vuitton bags. And Ayanna, sharp as a pin, burning with ideas, but from the wrong Nairobi ZIP code, walked that social tightrope daily with no safety net. 34 PAGE, she couldn't fake it. Her lunch was always simpler. No imported granola bars, no fruit bowls arranged like art, just bread and bananas, sometimes ugali wrapped in foil. She didn't know how to swim, never learned in the estate where even rainwater was rationed. She had exactly 2 pairs of shoes. Black school shoes and secondhand sneakers she scrubbed nightly. She didn't pretend otherwise. She didn't beg to blend in. Instead, she built. By second term, her dorm corner had transformed into a living experiment. Cables taped to her desk, breadboards between textbooks, a cracked phone screen blinking with life from a jury-rigged battery. While other girls polished nails and whispered about crushes, Ayanna debugged solar inverter code she'd found in an online forum. While they streamed K-dramas, she studied the behavior of energy flow in lithium-ion packs. She raided the school's e-waste bin like a treasure hunter, stripping dead remotes, old chargers, even a shattered electric toothbrush for usable parts. Her roommates started calling her the Tinkerer. Some said it with awe, peeking over her shoulder as LEDs blinked in strange rhythms. Some said it with sarcasm, the way you'd mock a kid who brought a paper kite to an airport. Ayanna didn't flinch, didn't shrink, didn't care. Because every resistor she soldered, every salvaged cell she revived, whispered back the same truth: you're not here to fit in. You're here to flip the script. One evening, as dusk bled over the hills like spilled ink, Ayanna wandered to the edge of the school field. It was the quiet hour, when the chatter died down, and even the loudest girls 35p a GE softened their voices. A breeze combed gently through the grass, and the sky, smeared in purples and golds, seemed to stretch forever. She stood still, hands tucked in her hoodie pockets, gazing down at the town that sprawled beneath Ridgeview's elevated perch. From up here, everything looked small, gridded, controlled, but Ayanna saw the pattern. The lights came on in a rhythm. First, the mansions in the hills, driveways glowing, security lights blazing like spotlights in a silent film. Then, a beat later, the townhomes and apartment blocks, warm amber windows flickering to life. And further out, so far you had to squint, was a long belt of shadow. The informal settlements, tin roofs, winding alleyways, her own origin story. Still cloaked in darkness, Ayanna exhaled, her breath a thin cloud in the cooling air. She whispered into the wind, almost like confessing to the night, "Even here, the light picks favorites." But there was no venom in her voice. She wasn't bitter. She was working. She sat on a stone bench, opened her notebook, and began tracing lines. Wires, storage cells, energy loops. Her pen moved like a pulse. Every curve, every scribble had a reason. Under the heading, Hybrid Storage plus Decentralized Output, she drew a circular neighborhood grid, a system that didn't need central permission to light up. And at the bottom of the page, in bold pencil strokes, she wrote, "The grid forgot us, so I will build another one." Behind her, the school lights buzzed softly, casting a long shadow in front of her. But Ayanna didn't move. She wasn't done dreaming. Not yet. The next day after robotics club, as most students spilled out into the manicured courtyard, laughing about servo motors and caffeine, Ayanna lingered behind to pack her tools. Her half-assembled prototype, a dual-function solar inverter and graywater recycler, still sat on the table like a question the world hadn't answered yet. 36p a GE, that's one MS. Kendi, one of Ridgeview's science mentors, approached quietly, arms folded, curiosity in her eyes. "I've been watching your designs," she said. "Your mind doesn't just tinker, it challenges." Ayanna looked up, cautious but intrigued. "MS." Kendi continued, "Most students here build cool gadgets. You build alternatives. You think differently, not just about machines, about systems, access, equity, justice. Have you ever considered starting your own project?" For a second, Ayanna didn't speak. The question wasn't new, but the setting was. She was no longer on the balcony of her Eastlands flat, soldering wires by candlelight. She was standing in a lab with proper ventilation, a toolkit she didn't have to beg for, and an adult who saw her. Her grip tightened slightly on the edge of the desk. Then her eyes lifted, sharp and steady, filled with a quiet fire. "I already have," she said, voice calm but certain. "MS." Kendi's mouth curved into the kind of smile teachers give when they know they're watching history before it's written. "Good," she said. "Then let's scale it." The first thing Ayanna noticed when she returned to Eastlands for the holidays was how nothing had changed, and how everything had. Same potholes, stitched like scars across the road. Same sagging power lines crisscrossing the sky, like tired spiderwebs. The same corner kiosk playing the same old Roomba song on a dusty radio, the singer wailing about lost time. Trash mounds still pirouetted in the breeze like broken kites, and the streetlights still blinked like half-awake eyes trying to stay open. But something had changed. The silence during the blackout, so familiar it was almost a lullaby, no longer made her clench her fists. It didn't gnaw at her or make her feel trapped. It filled her instead with quiet urgency. Not rage. Purpose. Ayanna dropped her suitcase inside the house, hugged Junior tight, kissed Mama's cheek, and walked straight out the back to the rusted tool shed that had once belonged to her late 37p a GE uncle, a man who'd once fixed bicycles and built bird traps from scrap wire. The air inside still smelled like oil and old ambition. She wiped the work table clean with a rag and unpacked wires, solder, circuits, and plans. Her Ridgeview badge still dangled from her backpack zipper, but here, it meant nothing. Here, she was just Ayanna again. Ayanna with an idea, burning hotter than the December sun. Soon the neighborhood kids began to gather, peeking through the doorway. One bold boy asked, "Are you building a spaceship?" She smiled. "Sort of." Mama peeked in too, shaking her head with a sigh. Look at her, home for 5 minutes and already dodging dishes. But Ayanna barely heard her. She was lost in the hum of creation. Inside that cramped shed, she wasn't just reconnecting wires. She was reconnecting to why she started. She wrote formulas on the window pane in soap. She jotted down notes with dirt under her fingernails. From the outside, it looked like chaos. But Ayanna, was building a revolution in miniature. A prototype, one wire, one idea, one blackout at a time. By day 3, Ayanna's prototype wasn't just a plan on paper anymore. It was rising from the concrete floor of the shed like a quiet rebellion in plastic, wire, and light. She wiped sweat from her brow, smudging a line of grease across her cheek, and surveyed her progress. Solar panels, bargained down from a scrap stall in Jacamba, now lined the roof of the shed like metallic petals catching sun. Most were cracked or chipped, but Ayanna had rewired them, coaxing volts from their tired bones. The biodigester, once a forgotten blue water drum, now sat coiled with PVC pipes and valves, slowly burping with promise as it began breaking down leftover Githeri 38p a GE and banana peels from Mama and Jerry's cabanda. She'd painted it green and labeled it Qua Min de Leo. A hydrogen electrolyzer, jerry-rigged from corroded steel plates and rain gutters, hissed softly beside a clear plastic tank of borehole water. Add a pinch of salt, a current from the solar panels, and boom, clean fuel from what most people poured down the drain. At the core of it all was a salvaged Raspberry Pi, flickering to life each morning like a brain in a box. She'd coded the interface herself, nothing flashy, just efficient. It tracked power usage, regulated battery flow, and beeped if anything overheated. Surrounding it, she'd built a miniature mock-up of a micro-apartment. Walls made of flattened jerrycans, a wireframe bunk bed, a recycled socket plate, a small LED bulb that blinked with dignity. Even a repurposed Jiko piped into the digester system for clean cooking gas. On the back of an old fridge door, hung up like a manifesto, she'd scrawled in bold marker, Project Nyumbani 3. Zero trash. Brains, boldness, home. She stood back, hands on hips, breathing hard, heart thudding with something between fear and awe. It was rough. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. And more than that, it proved something, that a fully self-sustaining home didn't need donor money or imported kits. It needed curiosity, courage, and a bit of copper wire. She didn't wait for funding, didn't wait for applause, didn't even wait for breakfast. Ayanna was building the future the city kept promising, but never delivered. Out of scraps, out of necessity, out of love. And just as she tightened the final bolt on the battery housing, Junior peeked in with wide eyes and whispered, "Can I live in that when it's done?" Ayanna smiled. That's the plan. 39p a GE on the 4th day, just as the afternoon sun began to bake the rust off the shed's tin roof. Kiptu appeared in the doorway, same cheeky grin, same oversized hoodie, now streaked with red soil from a boater ride gone rogue. His dusty backpack sagged like it had secrets, and his eyes scanned the room like a detective in a sci-fi movie. "You still doing that save-the-world thing?" he asked, voice half joke, half genuine. Ayanna didn't look up from the microcontroller she was calibrating. Her fingers danced over the wires like a pianist in a storm. "No," she said coolly. "Now I'm testing it." Kiptu stepped in, curiosity pulling him forward like a magnet. He crouched beside the model, his usual banter caught in his throat. The setup had evolved. The mini apartment now had motion sensor lights that flicked on when he moved. A digital meter blinked numbers on a cracked tablet screen. The biodigester gurgled with a kind of mechanical hunger. On a side shelf, a 3D printed fan spun lazily from reclaimed parts. He gave a low whistle. "This thing can actually light up a room." Ayanna finally looked at him, eyes glinting. She tapped the aluminum casing of the DIY hydrogen fuel cell like a secret weapon. "And cook your ugali," she said. "Charge your phone, power a laptop, no KPLC, no tokens, no waiting for politicians, no blackout apologies on X platform." Kiptu laughed, sharp and skeptical, but it caught midway, like his brain suddenly realized this wasn't a game. "Wait," he said. "You serious?" Ayanna didn't blink. She reached into a tin can, pulled out a tangled USB cable, and handed it to him like an invitation to the future. "Plug in," she said. He hesitated for a breath, then connected his phone. The screen lit up. Full bars, charging, no tricks, 40p a GE, no wires to the city grid. Just power. From her, from here. Kiptu stared at it like it was a miracle. Ayanna just smirked and went back to her soldering. "Welcome to Nyumbani 3.0, she said softly. "We're live." Words spread like whispers in the wind, soft at first, then louder, carried from balcony to balcony, Maitaru to Mama Mboga, classroom to cyber cafe. By midweek, the tool shed was no longer just Ayanna's lab. It had become a portal. Kids came by after school, still in dusty uniforms, clutching juice bottles and wild questions. Mothers peeked in between chores, arms crossed but eyes wide. One fundy uncle dropped off a busted solar lamp with a wink. Maybe you can make this thing believe in itself again. By Thursday, someone brought a broken inverter. Another, a crate of discarded wires. It was no longer just Ayanna's project. It was theirs. Then came Friday evening, that golden blue hour where the sun softens and Nairobi exhales. The whole estate had gathered, some standing, others perched on concrete blocks and yellow jerrycans. A few leaned against leaning walls. Children sat cross-legged, faces lit by the glow of expectation. From the inside of the tool shed, Ayanna emerged like an astronaut returning from orbit, grease on her cheek, solder marks on her fingertips, but eyes steady. She said nothing. She just flipped a single, homemade switch, and the bulb, an ordinary LED dangling from a beam, came alive. Light, bright, pure, silent, not from KPLC, not from diesel, not from privilege, from trash, from algae, from the sun. The crowd erupted. Cheers, gasps, laughter that cracked open years of tiredness. But one old woman, wrapped in a faded liso, just stood still, a glimmer in her eyes. She stepped forward slowly, as if afraid the moment would vanish if she moved too fast. 41p a G, my lights, she said in a trembling voice, have been off for 3 weeks. Then she touched her chest. But this is hope. That night, Ayanna couldn't sleep. It wasn't the noise. In fact, the estate was unusually quiet, as if even the stray dogs and midnight preachers had paused to consider what they'd witnessed. A single bulb, born from junk, had lit more than a tool shed. It had lit imaginations. But Ayanna's mind was louder than ever. She lay on her thin mattress under a corrugated roof, staring at the beams above her. Every creak of wood seemed to whisper a new what if. What if every estate had one? Not just a bulb, but a full system. Light, heat, energy, dignity. What if we built them modular, like Lego blocks of freedom, snapped together in rows across rooftops and alleyways? What if rent didn't just buy space, but sustainability? A package deal. Clean water, free power, safe cooking gas, community internet, all generated on-site, maintained by locals, owned by the people who lived there. What if living well wasn't a luxury, not something reserved for gated communities and villas behind walls? What if it was a right? She sat up, her hands twitching for a pen. She looked around the tool shed, her lab, her sanctuary, her rebellion in progress. She found a blunt marker, walked to the wall beside her solar converter diagram, and wrote in big, defiant letters, "We don't just need houses, we need homes that fight back." Then she stepped back, looked at her words and smiled, not because it was finished, but because it had finally begun. A week later, someone posted a video. 42p a G, it was raw, shaky, shot on a cracked phone, but it captured everything. Ayanna flipping the switch, the junk-born circuit coming alive, the kids cheering like it was Jamhuri Day, and that one LED bulb glowing in defiance of the darkness. In the background, someone could be heard whispering, "She did it. She actually did it." The clip didn't just spread, it erupted. Within days, the ripples turned into waves. A local journalist came knocking, voice recorder in hand, notebook already open. A county youth innovation officer sent a message, "We'd love to meet and discuss support pathways." An architecture professor from JQET emailed her directly, "I teach sustainable design. Let's scale this together." And from a quiet office in Westlands, a Nairobi-based NGO reached out with a subject line that read, "Funding Opportunity, Community Energy Pilot Eastlands Model." Ayanna didn't do a victory lap. She didn't scream or celebrate or buy herself chips cuckoo from the kiosk. She simply opened her battered notebook, flipped past the wiring diagrams and algae calculations, past the solar exposure charts and battery load sketches. Then on a fresh page in her neat block letters, she wrote Phase 1, Deployment, 43p a G, Chapter 5. The Nairobi skyline stretched before her like a jagged silhouette of ambition. Glass towers catching the morning sun, cranes swinging like steel pendulums, office blocks where dreams were bartered daily like stocks on a digital floor. Ayanna stood at the base of one of those towers, shoes polished but still scuffed at the tips, her mother's only blazer hugging her shoulders like memory and armor all at once. The cuffs were a little long, and the lining smelled faintly of charcoal. She clutched a manila folder to her chest. Inside were diagrams, sketches, a hand-bound proposal. Her heart thudded like a drumline on a protest march. This wasn't a science fair. It wasn't a tool shed. It was uptown Nairobi. The lobby gleamed with marble and quiet tension. The security desk barely glanced before waving her through, Her name was on the list. She entered the elevator alone. It smelled like perfume and power, and hummed as it climbed with a hush that reminded her of her Ridgeview dormitory. Too clean, too polished, too far from where light still feared to go. As the numbers blinked upward, she whispered her pitch under her breath, each word a bullet of clarity. The problem is urban poverty and broken infrastructure. The elevator dinged. The solution is decentralized, off-grid, tech-powered apartments. Designed by Africans for Africans, the doors slid open. Ayanna took one breath. 2, stepped forward, and just before crossing the threshold, she whispered her final line, not for them, but for herself, 44p a GE, introducing Ayanna Apartments. It landed somewhere between a pitch and a prayer, and with that, she walked in, one foot in Eastlands, the other in the future she was about to help build. The meeting room was a glass and chrome cathedral of capitalism. Chrome-backed chairs gleamed under strip lights. A wall-sized OLED screen blinked with polite anticipation. In the corner, a sleek coffee machine hummed like it was calculating Ayanna's net worth. It probably was. She sat straight, the manila folder open beside her laptop, thumb resting on the edge of the clicker. Opposite her, the investors looked like they belonged to a different Nairobi, the polished, air-conditioned one above the clouds. 2 men in tailored suits, and a woman with steel in her eyes and a razor-perfect bob, fingers templed like she was already 3 steps ahead. "Let's see what you've got," one of the men said, tapping a Montblanc pen against the table. Ayanna nodded once. "Click the remote. Slide 1, her estate in blackout, dusk swallowing clotheslines and balconies. Slide 2, her first glowing prototype, the one that made the old lady whisper, 'This is hope.' Slide 3, her vision project Nyumbani, pilot block alpha. 6 modular units, each self-powered. Solar panels, smart batteries, shared rooftop gardens, biogas cooktops from kitchen waste, rain-filtered water taps, free mesh network Wi-Fi, designed to breathe, to give, to serve. She met their eyes. "We don't just solve energy poverty," she said. "We reimagine urban living." A beat of silence. Then the woman nodded, slow and calculating. "What's your ask?" Ayanna took a breath, anchoring herself. 45p a GE, 10 million shillings for a 20% stake in our first pilot, plus mentorship and manufacturing support. A long pause. One of the men leaned back, then gave a small, knowing chuckle. "Ambitious," he said. "What if we gave you 15 million for 51%? Ayanna's fingers froze on the table. She blinked. "That's majority control." "Exactly," the man smiled. "We bring the money, you bring the dreams. Together, we make it a company." The air in the room tightened, like it knew something was about to break. The woman leaned forward, voice soft but surgical. "You're bright and brave, but the world isn't fair. You want a scale. You want impact. This is how it works. You give a little, you gain a lot." Ayanna glanced down at her notes, her sketches, her numbers, her name on the title slide. Then she looked out the window. The Nairobi skyline glittered. Glamorous, unreachable, sharp-edged. Then her eyes flicked to the reflection in the glass. A girl in her mother's blazer, standing in a room that didn't believe she'd say no. She looked back at the table, and stood. "Thank you," she said quietly, voice steady. "But I'm building light, not selling it." She closed the laptop, slid the folder under her arm, and extended her hand. They shook it, some with surprise, one with faint admiration. Then Ayanna walked out, heart racing, back straight, head held high. Not because she had the money, but because she still had the mission. 46p a GE later that evening, Ayanna sat cross-legged on the chipped concrete balcony of their Eastlands flat, hoodie zipped up, forehead resting lightly against the rusty railing. Below, kids were kicking a flat football between stones and sandals, laughing wildly as if joy had no curfew. Their shadows stretched long in the orange spill of a single solar lamp she'd helped repair last month, powered by parts salvaged from a broken inverter and an old TV aerial. Beside her, Kiptu sat peeling a mango with his house keys, juice trickling down his knuckles. "You really turned down 15 million? He asked, half disbelief, half worship. "Yup," Ayanna said, eyes fixed on the kids below. He whistled. "Boss move." She smirked, leaning back against the wall, but her heart was doing backflips inside her chest. She could still hear the investor's voice in her head. "You want a scale. This is how it works." Was she crazy? What if no one else believed in her vision? What if this was her only shot, and she just fumbled it like an old remote with no batteries? But she didn't say that out loud. She just sat there, watching the shadows flicker on the dusty estate walls, letting the fear pass like a storm cloud. The next morning, the sun rose gently over Eastlands, casting a soft gold wash over peeling paint, sagging power lines, and rooftops cluttered with plastic tanks and rusted aerials. The city yawned awake with the usual sounds: roosters, radio static, distant mat-at-us revving like tired giants. Ayanna stood by the front door, her Ridgeview bag slung over one shoulder, a second-hand duffel filled with books and circuit bits dragging behind her. She wore her school sweater, patched, faded at the elbows, but clean. Crisp. The toolshed door behind her was locked, its secret safe until the next holiday. Inside, Mama and Jerry wrapped up some boiled eggs and mandazi in a paper bag, tucked in a napkin, then pressed it into Ayanna's hand like a blessing. "Don't forget to eat, even if you're saving the world," she said with a soft laugh. 47p a GE Jr. appeared, rubbing his eyes, still in his SpongeBob pajamas. He handed her a drawing, stick figures under a solar panel roof, with Ayanna Hams scribbled above in bubble letters. She kissed the top of his head and ruffled his hair. Then at the gate, she turned back for one last glance. The same pothole outside, the same cracked walls, but also the same solar lamp glowing stubbornly by the alley. The same old woman from last week, now resting on her doorstep, nodding at Ayanna like she knew something big was coming. She hugged her mother tightly, the kind of hug that carried words they hadn't said. "Make them see you," Mama whispered. "I will," Ayanna promised, her voice steady. At the bus stop, the matron called her name. She climbed aboard the Ridgeview bus, nodded at the sleepy faces of her schoolmates, and slid into a window seat. As the bus pulled away, Ayanna stared out at the city. The grit, the ghosts, the glow. Her bag was heavier than usual. So was her heart, because she wasn't just going back to school. She was going back to finish something. And maybe, just maybe, start something too big to stop. Days melted into weeks, weeks into months, and before long, the years had quietly slipped by. Now, Ayanna was in her final year at Ridgeview Girls Academy. She no longer walked through Ridgeview like a girl trying to fit in. She walked like she belonged, not because the world had made space for her, but because she had carved one with grit and circuit boards. She was now head of the Innovation Club, deputy captain of robotics, and the quiet force behind Ridgeview's first-ever solar hackathon, where dorm rooms turned into laboratories and even girls who once teased her for fixing junk now queued to borrow batteries. Her classmates called her professor, half joking, half serious. The teachers just smiled and let her rewire the broken lights in the chemistry lab without asking. 48p a GE. But behind the accolades and STEM medals pinned to her dorm curtain, Ayanna was restless. She was building something, bigger than the school, bigger than her. Project Nyumbani had evolved in her notebooks, version 4.6 now, and it wasn't just about off-grid homes anymore. It was a blueprint for urban justice, a manifesto wrapped in wires and water filters. While other students were applying to universities abroad, Ayanna spent her nights emailing fabricators in industrial area, messaging open-source energy forums, and pitching her evolving idea in youth summits and weekend hackathons. Some nights, the pressure got to her. The expectation, the loneliness of being the girl who turned down millions, the weight of knowing she carried more than just ambition. She carried Eastland's, she carried her mother's laughter and Junior's drawings, and the flicker of a bulb that made an entire estate cheer. When it got too much, she'd walk to the edge of the school field. From there, she could see the town below, and beyond it, if the night was clear, she could imagine the lights of Nairobi blinking like stars that had fallen but still fought to shine. One night, she stood there alone, wind tugging at her hoodie, and whispered, "This isn't about me anymore. It's about everyone who's been waiting in the dark." Back in class, Ayanna didn't just solve equations, she lived them. In physics, she challenged formulas with real-life estate problems. When the class learned about thermodynamics, she asked if they could simulate heat loss in metal-roofed houses. In design tech, while others drafted shoe racks and jewelry holders, Ayanna sketched a solar-powered borehole pump that could be community-owned and mobile. But more than her grades or awards, it was the way she turned her passion into a movement that set her apart. She started holding impromptu build sessions in the unused storage room behind Lab C. Word spread quickly. If you wanted to learn how to turn junk into power, go to Ayanna's corner. She taught first years how to strip wires with a razor blade, how to repair frayed charging cables, how to map out circuits on torn graph paper, and how to write basic Arduino code on her battered laptop. Keys missing but still breathing brilliance. 49p a GE. Most of the girls who came to her weren't the popular ones. They were quiet, curious, often overlooked, girls who hid their hunger behind big glasses or borrowed uniforms. Some were on bursaries. Some had never touched a soldering iron before. Tech isn't just for the rich, Ayanna told them once, crouched over a salvaged inverter from an old DVD player. It's for the ones who need it the most, the ones no one is building for. That sentence stayed with them like scripture. They started calling themselves the Girl Gear Crew. They made custom badges from bottle caps and soldered old computer chips into necklaces. At lunch, they brainstormed tech for everyday people ideas, affordable water filters, solar lamps for cabana vendors, low-cost phone charging kiosks. And they weren't just learning skills, they were learning belief. By the time mocks rolled around, even girls who once mocked Ayanna for wearing the same pair of shoes every day were sliding into her desk during break. "Can you help me understand this resistor thing? Ayanna, do you think I could be an engineer? Do you think my project idea is stupid?" She always answered with patience and purpose, because Ayanna didn't just have a brain. She had a blueprint, a vision, one that reached far beyond Ridgeview's ivy-covered walls and out into a world still full of dark corners waiting for someone to bring the light. Graduation loomed. The Ridgeview air had changed. The halls were suddenly louder with laughter, quieter with reflection. Exam timetables were pinned to every corkboard. Farewell speeches were being drafted, uniforms being signed with Sharpies. Seniors walked a little slower now, like they were trying to memorize the smell of the library, the squeak of the dorm stairs, the way the jacaranda trees bloomed purple near the science block. 50p a G.E. Ayanna's desk drawer overflowed with letters. Thick, official-looking envelopes from universities across Africa, tech schools in Ghana, engineering scholarships in South Africa, environmental design programs in Morocco, a couple from abroad, too, a university in Canada, one in Germany, full rides, partial rides, research grants. Any other student might have picked one, boasted about it, and started packing. But not Ayanna. She hadn't chosen yet, not because she was afraid, not because she doubted her options, but because her mind was somewhere else. She wasn't chasing credentials, she was chasing impact. She would stare at the letters late at night, while the rest of Dorm C snored softly around her. And then she'd tuck them back into the drawer and turn to her notebook, where Nyumbani 4.7 was already taking shape, her most ambitious version yet. Not just a structure, a system, a movement, a new model for how Africans could live. Ridgeview had taught her polish. She now spoke fluent tech. Her presentation slides were sleek, her prototypes beautiful. Her science fair posters had infographics and QR codes. She could walk into a boardroom and speak with poise, confidence, data. But that fire, the one that made her rip apart radios in grade 6, that taught her to power a bulb from borehole saltwater, that made her turn down 15 million shillings because her dignity wasn't for sale. That fire, that still lived in a tool shed in Eastlands, in a girl who had once whispered, "We don't just need houses, we need homes that fight back." And deep down, Ayanna knew school was almost over. But her mission, her work, her calling, was just beginning. Graduation day, Ridgeview Girls Academy, 51p a G.E. The Ridgeview lawns had never looked greener. The sky above stretched wide and impossibly blue, as if the heavens themselves were proud. Folding chairs formed neat rows beneath white tents, and the scent of fresh flowers and anticipation hung in the air like perfume. Girls moved in clusters, giggling, hugging, their navy gowns fluttering like sails in the wind. Proud parents arrived with phones raised high. Teachers stood in corners wiping misty eyes and pretending it was just the pollen. Ayanna stood near the back of the crowd, tugging nervously at her gown sleeve. Her mortarboard was pinned awkwardly over her neatly braided hair. She wore her only pair of black shoes, polished to a shine. Her cheeks glowed, not with makeup, but with the heat of becoming. Mama and Jerry sat in the audience, clutching a small handbag and blinking back tears every time her daughter's name was mentioned. Junior, a little taller now, wore his Sunday best and kept pointing excitedly at the program booklet. "She's number 4 on the honors list," he whispered loudly. Number 4 in the whole school. The ceremony began. Speeches, songs, poetry, applause that rolled over the field like distant thunder. Then the headmistress stepped up to the podium, cleared her throat, and smiled. "Today, we don't just graduate girls," she said. "We launch thinkers, builders, healers, leaders." When they called Ayanna's name, the applause was immediate. Loud, long. A few girls even stood up, not out of tradition, out of respect. She walked across the stage slowly, deliberately, as if each step was laying foundation stone on her future. When the headmistress handed her the certificate, she leaned in and whispered, "Ayanna, you've already changed Ridgeview. Go change the world." Ayanna blinked quickly, nodded, and turned to face the crowd. She spotted her mother standing, hands clasped over her mouth, Junior waving wildly. She smiled. 52p a GE, a real one. Later, after cake and handshakes and goodbye selfies, Ayanna, Mama, and Junior sat beneath the jacaranda tree near the science block, her favorite place. In her hands, her certificate. The wind rustled the petals around them like a blessing. Ayanna didn't know exactly where she'd go next, but she knew who she was now, and that made all the difference. 4 months after graduation Eastlands, Nairobi the toolshed still stood. Weathered, rusted, noble. Ayanna sat inside it on a stool made from an old paint bucket, her back hunched over a mess of wires, plastic tubing, and a cracked laptop running on a solar-charged battery. Her Ridgeview uniform was long gone, traded for a faded black girls invent t-shirt and grease-smudged jeans. The estate was loud again. Kids played with punctured balls. Someone's mum was shouting about Sukuma Wiki prices. A preacher's voice boomed from a portable speaker 3 courtyards away. And still, Ayanna tinkered. Focused, fire-eyed, Nyumbani 5. 2 was in progress now, more compact, more affordable, more replicable. The prototype sat humming beside her, collecting gray water and generating enough power to charge 3 phones at once and run a clean cook stove. But even as she worked, something gnawed at her. She had applied for 7 grants, written 4 proposals, reached out to 2 accelerators. Silence. The hype had faded. Journalists had stopped calling. The viral video from last year. Forgotten. The investors she once turned down. Moved on. And Ayanna. She kept building, even when the world wasn't watching. Then at exactly 2:37 p.m., her phone buzzed on the dusty work table. 53p a GE, she almost didn't check it. Probably just Safaricom spam again. But then she saw the name. New message, Impact Fund for Africa. We've been following your journey since Ridgeview. Your prototype speaks louder than words. Are you ready to talk about scaling? We are. Ayanna froze. The shed was silent now. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. She read the message again. And again. Not a dream. Not a maybe. A door. Opening. Finally. Her hands trembled. Not from fear this time, but from the sheer rightness of it. She stood slowly, walked to the wall of the shed, the one where she had scribbled her earliest manifesto years ago, and underneath the fading words, "We don't just need houses, we need homes that fight back." She added in bold ink, "Let's begin phase 2. Then she picked up her phone, stared at the screen for a long moment, and hit reply. 54p a GE chapter SIX. The sun over Kibra didn't shine like it did in Ridgeview's polished courtyards or downtown's tinted glass towers. It was raw, revealing. It shimmered off rusted roofs and caught the glitter of broken glass on alley floors. It drenched the air in sweat, smoke, and that sharp metallic scent of corrugated iron baking under heat. The kind of sun that didn't flinch, didn't pretend. Ayanna stood in a cleared rectangle of community-donated land, her boots half buried in loose soil, eyes narrowed against the light. This was it. The start, the return, the test. The grant from Impact Fund for Africa had finally come through. Not a skyscraper's budget, no, but enough to begin. Enough for 3 smart housing units, each solar-powered, water-capturing, biogas-generating, and digitally managed. The very first Ayanna pilot block. It wouldn't just house people. It would liberate them. Self-sustaining, modular, scalable, a living prototype planted right in the heart of one of the most densely populated places on the continent. And it would rise not from concrete alone, but from community. But Ayanna knew better than anyone. Vision alone doesn't build walls. She needed people, because this was no longer a solo mission. It was a movement, and this was her team, 55p a GE1. Kip2, her co-founder and CTO, leaned against a toolbox, chewing sugarcane and arguing with a solar panel. A self-taught coder with a mouth full of math and mischief. He could hack a router blindfolded and had strong feelings about lithium cells, mesh networks, and Arsenal FC. If KPLC was a human, he often said, I'd slap them with a UPS. 2. Zawadi, architecture student from UON, unrolled her sketches like they were scripture. Her lines didn't just show walls, they sang. Ventilation paths, angled rooftops, privacy pockets without barbed fences. Design isn't just shapes, she said, it's a promise. 3. Wekesa, the welder from down the road, carried an angle grinder like a priest holds a Bible. His hands, all calluses and strength. His words rare, but when they came, they stuck. Steel is like people, he once muttered, cutting a beam. Press it right, it bends. Rush it, it breaks. 4. Amina, born and raised in Kibra, stood at the edge of the lot, holding a clipboard and a crowd in the palm of her voice. She coordinated everything: permits, volunteers, budget lines, even that nosy MCA who kept asking if this was a political stunt. "We don't owe anyone silence," she told Ayanna. "We just owe the community results." Together, they were the blueprint behind the blueprint. They weren't just building homes, they were building a new way of thinking, a new model for cities, a rebellion wrapped in roofing sheets and self-respect. Ayanna looked around, at the piles of salvaged metal, the drums full of biodigester parts, the notebook full of deadlines and dreams, and took a breath that felt like sunrise. Then she stood before her team under the banner and said, "We have no backup plan. We are the backup plan." And just like that, the welding torch sparked, the spade struck earth, and the first bolt of the revolution was driven home. Kibra didn't blink. It watched. 56p a G it waited. And as the sun climbed higher over its crowded roofs, it seemed to nod in silent approval. They were building the impossible, and it was working. They worked like warriors, not the kind in armor, but the kind in worn-out sneakers, second-hand gloves, and hearts full of fight. Mornings began before the light. The sunrise wasn't for aesthetics, it was for productivity. Ayanna led a daily huddle beside a half-assembled unit, her notebook in one hand, a mug of strong roadside chai in the other. Some days she opened with a quote, others with a checklist, always with urgency. "Salamu, today we bolt, we weld, we code, we prove." By 7:00 a.m., the lot buzzed louder than a Nairobi roundabout. Zawadi barked measurements, chalking blueprints on a plywood like a street artist sketching rebellion. Wekesa moved like a myth, flipping steel bars onto his shoulder, welding sparks raining around him like fireflies. Kiptu straddled a ladder shouting, "Someone hand me the 12-volt Li-Fi PO4 pack, or I'll turn this block into a toaster." Amina was a moving spreadsheet in human form, calling suppliers, wrangling volunteers, and making sure no one stole the solar panels. Days started with sun salutations and power drills, bricks stacked by hand, panels bolted on sloped rooftops, angled just right to kiss the sun. Biogas pits dug deep, by spade, not machine, with sweat instead of concrete mixers. Lunch breaks were less meals, more fuel stops. Ugali and Sukuma on plastic plates shared jokes about who had the worst tan line. Evenings were longer than they should have been. Circuit testing under torchlight, code debugging on a phone hotspot. 57p, a GE budgets argued over with dry lips and hopeful eyes. Ayanna slept in the container office, the same one that doubled as storage and command center. Her bed, a thin mattress on plywood. Her pillow, her hoodie. Her alarm, the metallic knock of possibility, hammering against the tin roof with every sunrise. And for every challenge, a monsoon rain that drowned wiring, a rogue power surge that fried Kiptu's Raspberry Pi, a late shipment of recycled glass. There was a victory that changed everything. The hydrogen fuel cell fizzed to life. The rainwater harvesting system filled its first drum. The smart battery circuit held through the night. The Wi-Fi router blinked online, offering free, stable connection. And then at 8:52 p.m. on a Wednesday, the first apartment lit up, fully off-grid. Not a test light, not a simulation. A real home, with real people. The tenants, Fatma, a single mother of two, who used to boil water with charcoal and pray for rain. Abura, a boda rider who now charged his phone and his power bank overnight, for the first time in his life. Nima, a tailoring student who finally had enough light to stitch at night and sell her designs over WhatsApp. Each paid a flat, all-inclusive rent. No surprise bills, no corruption, just water, power, internet, cooking gas, security, dignity. One block, 3 homes, a new blueprint for urban life. 58p a GE Ayanna stood under the soft glow of the LED porch light that night, eyes burning not from exhaustion, but from awe. "We did it," she whispered. And Kiptu, wiping sweat with the back of his hand, grinned, "We ain't done." The team sprawled across the concrete rooftop, backs against solar water tanks and upturned paint buckets. Above them, a string of solar-powered fairy lights blinked lazily in the breeze, casting soft halos over their sweat-slicked faces while they are busy eating mutura. Meanwhile, someone had queued up a low-beat playlist on a Bluetooth speaker, part lullaby, part resistance anthem. Ayanna sat cross-legged on a cement slab, cradling a plastic plate, her fingers greasy with roasted mutura and ketchup-smudged fries from the local joint downstairs. They were bone-tired, but alive, buzzing, *** high on something bigger than success, Asterisk, they were high on proof. Kip2 leaned back, using a coiled extension cord as a pillow, and looked up at the stars. You realize, he said through a mouthful of meat, you just built a damn spaceship in the slums, right? Ayanna laughed, deep, real, glowing from the chest. Nah, not a spaceship. She looked around at the glowing windows of the 3 finished units below, where tenants now lived with light, heat, signal, and safety. Then her voice quiet, steady, a seed. Zawadi raised her soda can, already warm, fizz nearly dead. To the next block, and the next, and the next. They clinked together, soda, water bottles, metal mugs, a toast made of plastic and grit and shared purpose. But as the laughter softened and the playlist rolled into something wordless and slow, Wekesa, who'd been quiet all night, spoke. His voice was low, almost lost in the music. 59p a GE, they'll come for us, you know. The clinking stopped. Ayanna turned to him, plate resting on her lap. He didn't look at her. He looked past the rooftop edge. Down at the alleyways where power cables sagged like exhausted vines and private water trucks, snaked into estates with inflated prices and no apologies. The ones who profit from people staying poor, he said. The ones who sell darkness, who tax broken systems, who want people begging for what should be theirs by right. His voice carried the weight of scrap metal and lived wisdom. Ayanna's eyes didn't blink. Her spine straightened. Her smile spread slowly, not soft but sharp, the kind of smile that knew exactly what it had signed up for. Then let them come. She stood, brushing crumbs from her jeans, staring into the shadows like they were old rivals. We're not just building homes, we're building a way out. Silence followed, not empty silence, charged silence, opaque. Above them, the solar lights flickered. Not because the battery was dying, but because the wind shifted. Below them, the estate murmured with late-night stories, small radios, kettle whistles, and the soft hum of dignity returning. The revolution had begun, and they knew the war wasn't over. But tonight they had built light, and that light was watching. It began in whispers, 60p a GE at dawn, as the first rays spilled over Kibra's rooftops. A journalist from NTV showed up at the gates of Ayanna Apartments. She wore jeans, boots, and curiosity on her sleeve. Her cameraman, half awake but alert, started filming before Ayanna had even zipped up her hoodie. People are saying you built power, water, gas, and Wi-Fi into a single estate unit, without government support. Is that true? Ayanna blinked at the sun, hair still tied up from a night of soldering circuits. Not just true, she replied. It's replicable. The segment aired at 1 p.m. sharp. By 3 p.m., the footage had hit YouTube. By 5 p.m., a clip had gone viral on TikTok. Kids reenacting the light switch moment. By 8 p.m., the hashtag was trending. #Ayanna Apartments, #LightByUs, #Africa builds back. The next morning, her inbox exploded. A university from Cape Town wanted her to keynote their sustainability summit. A foreign investor offered to scale her brand, with conditions buried in legalese. A politician hinted at partnership, but only if his face was on the plaque. An NGO in Ghana asked if the blueprint could be adapted for coastal humidity. One email simply read, "My village in Nyanza needs this. We can give land. Let's talk." She sat with her team in the toolshed-turned office, the blueprint rolled out across the metal table, coffee mugs doubling as paperweights. Kip2 scrolled through mentions on his tablet, muttering, "Yo, someone just made a remix song from your quote. You're officially a meme." Zawadi circled regions on a laminated map. If we move fast, Kisumu could be next. Sun-rich, water access, donor-friendly. Wekesa, arms folded, stared at the sketch of the next unit. We'll need better insulation for Mombasa. See, air rusts fast. 61p a GE. Ayanna typed into her laptop with surgical precision. We'll draft a standard kit, a modular design. Local labor, local materials, open source, no gatekeeping. Ayanna stood up slowly, shoulders square, eyes burning with clarity. She looked at her people, then at the blueprint, then out the window, where 3 lit-up units now stood like hope in steel and glass. Let's replicate, she said, voice steady as foundation stone. Mombasa, Kisumu, Eldoret, Garissa, Kigali, Accra, wherever the lights go out, we'll bring them back on. And beneath the blueprint, in thick black marker, she scrawled, "We will light up Africa, one block at a time." 62p a GE. Chapter 7, 6 weeks after Kibra, the second Ayanna apartment block broke ground on a sun-scorched plot near the edge of Kisumu City, a stone's throw from the lake. The soil was softer here, the air thick with humidity and hope. Volunteers showed up in droves, students in gumboots, mechanics between shifts, mamas from the market with tea flasks and prayers. Wekesa dug the first trench. Zawadi adjusted the angles for maximum cross-ventilation. Kiptu coded on a folding chair under a mango tree. And the world noticed. Headlines bloomed like jacarandas in rainy season. Young woman redefines housing in Africa. Eco-apartments that run on trash and sunlight. Kenyan youth build homes that power themselves. Ayanna's inbox choked with subject lines. Potential partnership with MIT D-Lab. TEDx Nairobi wants you. Time Magazine Youth Innovator nomination. Please confirm. Would you consider franchising? A place within the site was now an open-air HQ in Kisumu. A whiteboard on wheels kept count of blocks, battery stock, water tank installations, and press appearances. We need 3 more plumbers and at least 2 local coders. Amina muttered, flipping through resumes. And someone needs to talk to that documentary crew. They're filming our toilets. 63p a GES. A film crew from Ghana was on site, filming a feature called The House That Thinks. Boom mics hovered over construction sounds. Drones buzzed above. Cameras followed Ayanna like she was a president in overalls. And all the while, communities kept calling, from Kajiado to Kigali, Lusaka to Lodwar. We've got land. We've got people. Come build here. We believe. Ayanna tried to breathe it in, the gratitude, the gravity, the growth. But not all attention was applause. That same week, a suspicious audit request arrived from the city housing department, despite no official complaint. A local contractor threatened legal action, claiming Ayanna's team was undercutting market rates and disrupting standard industry flows. An anonymous flyer was circulated in Kisumu city center. These apartments are illegal, unsafe, unregulated. Reject them. The smiles started coming with shadows, sudden visits from plainclothes inspectors, murmurs that some utility cartels were not happy. A closed-door meeting where Ayanna was told, in polite Swahili, to slow down or be slowed down. She took it all in, every headline, every threat, every glowing article and growing resistance. That night, after the last camera drone powered down and the workers left with dust in their hair and pride in their bones, Ayanna sat alone under the framework of Block 2, looking at the stars through scaffolding. Kiptu walked over, offering her a soda. Still worth it? He asked. Ayanna took a sip. Fizzy, sharp, alive, every nail, every code line, every fight. 64p a GE, and just before sleep claimed the city, she whispered into her notes, "Let them try to stop light. They'll lose." One Monday morning, Eastlands, 6:47 a.m., the kettle hadn't even boiled when Junior walked into the kitchen and found Mama and Jerry sitting at the plastic table, newspaper spread before her like a battlefield. She wasn't wailing, not sobbing, just quietly crumbling. Tears slipped silently down her cheeks as her eyes clung to a headline that shouldn't have existed. Slum girl or scam girl? Millions funded, but where's the paperwork? Whistleblower claims tech in Ayanna apartments is theft from university research. Junior froze. The kettle whistled sharply in the silence. Mama wiped her eyes with the hem of her liso. Why would they say this? Mtoto wangu. After everything she's done, he didn't answer. He just grabbed his phone, stepped outside, and called his sister. Kisumu Ayanna's office container. 7:12 a.m., the call came just as Ayanna was stepping into the container office. Coffee mug in one hand, blueprint tube in the other. Aye, Junior's voice was small, unsure. Did you see today's paper? No, why? Silence. Then, it's not good. Mama's crying. 65p a GE. Ayanna's stomach didn't drop. It coiled, tight and sharp like wire. She walked to the office desk, opened her laptop, and saw her inbox already choking with messages. Subject, urgent media inquiry allegations. Subject, NGO pulling out pending clarification. Subject, can you prove your tech is original? She clicked the link Junior had texted. There it was, black text, bold, brutal, accusations that her innovation wasn't hers, that she'd used donated funds without public accountability. An anonymous whistleblower claiming she had copied solar hydrogen hybrid tech from a university project in South Africa. She's more PR than progress, one quote read. A pretty face hiding patchwork tech, said another. Smart girl but no engineer, one pundit wrote on X. Ayanna stood still, her breath shallow, not in fear, not in panic, but in something colder, sharper, calculated awareness. This was no misunderstanding. This was a hit, a smear campaign, coordinated, timed. The headlines were weaponized. The timing, Monday morning. meant maximum visibility. Someone wanted to burn her down before she could break ground again. Kiptu burst into the office 5 minutes later, face pale, holding his phone. "We're trending again, but this time it's a mess. The bots are everywhere. My DMs are toxic. They're calling us frauds." Ayanna followed, laptop under her arm. Donor inquiries spiked. Some want to pause, and the audit letters are doubling. 66p a GE. Ayanna didn't blink. She slowly folded the newspaper page she'd printed, set it on the desk beside her circuit diagrams, and exhaled. "Okay." Zawadi looked up, startled. "Okay." Ayanna nodded, fire flickering behind her eyes. "Let them come, but we don't respond with panic." She picked up a marker, turned to the whiteboard, and wrote in huge letters, "Truth is our blueprint." Then she circled it 3 times. "We fight this, not just for us, but for every girl in a tool shed with a dream. They don't get to erase us. Not now, not ever." By afternoon, the Kisumu HQ, usually humming with creative energy, had turned into a battlefield of tabs, texts, and tension. News channels buzzed on the portable screen. Social feeds were ablaze with speculation. Investors were circling in fear, not curiosity. The Pilot Block's front gate now had 2 idle journalists, and a source in a hoodie trying to peer through the mesh. 2 brutal truths had landed on Ayanna's desk like grenades. 1. A notorious real estate cartel, long accused of inflating rent in Nairobi, sabotaging county-led housing, and laundering money through shell estates, was behind the coordinated smear. 2. Someone inside her circle had leaked internal memos, partial budgets, early-stage designs out of context, twisted for scandal. The phrase, "anonymous insider" at Ayanna Inc., was already being quoted in blogs and evening broadcasts. Zawadi's face was storm-level fury as she slammed her laptop shut. "They're scared of us," she snapped. "That means we're winning." Kiptu leaned back in his chair, fingers twitching like he wanted to hack the entire press corps. "I traced some of the bots, same network that tried to kill off the Kibra MP's sanitation project last year. Cartel fingerprints all over it." 67p a GE. Ayanna, always the strategist, held her pen still for a long beat, then spoke softly. "But if this sticks, no bank will underwrite us, no ministry will back us, no community will trust us. One fake invoice, one tech doubt, and we're toast." Ayanna stood, eyes narrowed, calm as a moonlit tide. "Then we don't flinch. We fight." She turned to the whiteboard, erased deployment plans, wrote 3 new lines in capital letters, "Full audit, public walkthroughs, tech open-sourced." Kiptu blinked. "You sure?" He motioned toward the USB drives stacked on the desk. "That's years of work. Once we open-source this, anyone can copy, scale it, steal it." Ayanna didn't hesitate. "Good," she said, steady as iron. "Let them copy light. It's the darkness we're fighting." The room went quiet, that kind of quiet where something shifts, where the dream sheds its skin and becomes a movement. Ayanna smiled, slow and dangerous. "Let's draft the transparency framework." Zawadi opened her sketchpad. "Public walkthroughs this Saturday. Open gates. Full access." Kiptu cracked his knuckles. "I'll write the GitHub README myself." Ayanna opened a new page in her notebook and wrote, "If light spreads faster when it's shared, then let's make it unstoppable." That evening, flight to Nairobi, the skies over Lake Victoria shimmered as the small regional flight took off. Ayanna staring out the window, her hoodie pulled up, fingers wrapped tight around her notebook. She didn't speak. She plodded. The press attacks hadn't buried her. They had amplified her signal. 68p a GE by the time the plane touched down in Nairobi. She had a plan. The team rolled deep. Ayanna, Kiptu, Zawadi, Ayanna, Wekesa, each of them wearing simple Ayanna apartments t-shirts like armor. No glitz, no filters, just facts and people. Cameras were rolling as they walked reporters through the very first Ayanna apartment block, the one that sparked the revolution. Tenants gave tours, proud, precise, uncoached. Kids explained how they separate kitchen scraps into wet and dry bins to fuel the biodigester. A chalkboard on one wall read, "Energy math. Our food waste equals 3 hours of cooking gas." And then came the moment that cracked the internet. An 81-year-old go-go in a bright liso, her silver braids tied back, flipped a switch inside her tidy one-room flat. A soft LED glow filled the space. She smiled into the camera and declared, "This light came from my kitchen leftovers." The video went viral. #GoGo Power trended for days. Momentum surged, but so did the backlash. Just within days, while in Nairobi, a midnight raid hit the Kisumu site. Solar panels smashed, battery lines torn. Someone scrawled, "Stop this nonsense," in red paint across the container office wall. A cease and desist letter landed on Amanna's desk the next morning from a legal firm no one had heard of, supposedly representing East Africa Urban Holdings Limited. They claimed ownership of the phrase sustainable housing grid, a term Ayanna had coined in her earliest pitch decks. Kiptu stared at the paperwork, dark circles under his eyes, his laptop humming with firewall logs and flagged IPs. "We poke the beast," he muttered. 69p a GE Ayanna, standing beside the solar frame at the rooftop of the apartments, didn't even flinch. She simply wiped her sweaty hands on a rag, stepped back, and looked at the rising scaffold. "No," she said. "We woke it." Wekesa grunted in approval. Zawadi smirked and muttered, "Let them sue the sunlight next." Ayanna plucked a piece of paper from her notebook, pulled out a marker and wrote on it, "You can break our tech, but you can't black out our truth." 3 days later, Ayanna was in the middle of debugging a faulty charge controller when Amanna walked in, holding a cream-colored envelope like it was ticking. "This just came," she said. "No address, no stamp, hand-delivered." The envelope was heavy, real paper, expensive ink. Inside, a single card with embossed letters. "Meet us. The View Hotel, rooftop, 7:00 p.m. We want to buy you out. Walk away rich. No strings, or don't and watch your vision rot." Kiptu paced in the background. Zawadi read the note over Ayanna's shoulder and hissed, "That's not an offer. That's a threat." Amanna crossed her arms. "Don't go. They want you alone for a reason." Ayanna just tied her braids tighter. "If they want to meet the girl from the estate," she said, zipping up her fire-orange hoodie, "then let's give them a front-row seat." The View Hotel, 6:59 p.m. The rooftop sparkled. Champagne glasses clinked. Somewhere, soft jazz played like a lie. Ayanna stood alone at the railing, the Nairobi skyline stretching behind her like a battlefield of ambition. 70p a GE, a man in a tailored charcoal suit appeared. Clean cut, Colgate smile, the kind of person whose handshake smelled like contracts and collateral. He pulled out a chair, set a silver envelope on the table, and slid it toward her. "KSH 100 million, he said, smooth as polished steel. "You walk, we take over Ayanna Apartments. Let us scale it the right way. No drama, no delays. You live soft. You've earned it." Ayanna sat down slowly, opened the envelope. Inside, a printed check. Real, signed, 9 figures dancing across the line, like temptation in ink. She stared at it, then reached into her hoodie, pulled out a pen, flipped the check over, and wrote, "You build prisons." She capped the pen, stood, slid the check back across the table. The man blinked. "Excuse me." Ayanna leaned forward just enough for her words to land like a sunrise. "You see poverty as a market. I see it as a wound. You want to scale units. I want to scale liberation. You want to own. I want to unleash. So no, I'm not for sale." She turned, walked away without another word, and descended the rooftop stairs like she was walking back into revolution. Behind her, the envelope lay untouched, and the Nairobi moon watched her go, silent and gleaming, like it knew. This wasn't the end of Ayanna Apartments. It was the ignition. 71p a GE back at Kisumu HQ. The container office was thick with tension. Screens glowed, fans hummed, mugs of cold chai stood forgotten on the table. Kiptu paced like a caged lion, muttering about firewalls and counterhacks. Wekesa sat silent, eyes locked on the door like he was waiting for someone to try something stupid. Amanna stood calmly at the whiteboard, already drafting a crisis press statement titled, "Transparency is our blueprint." But Ayanna, she didn't sit, she didn't pace. She walked to the whiteboard, the one they used for sketches and system schematics, and picked up a marker pen. She drew a box, then an arrow, then 5 words, "They want our silence." She paused, then underlined it once, hard enough for the pen to pop open. "Let's give them a megaphone." The team froze. Ayanna turned, eyes burning, not with fear but with vision. She began writing Plan B. Her handwriting sharp and certain, turn every Ayanna site into a training hub. Recruit 100 youth per estate. Coders, welders, electricians, dreamers. Launch Ayanna Academy, a radical, practical school for decentralized, self-sustaining housing systems. Partner with Pan-African youth networks, urban changemakers, green tech orgs, climate collectives. Export the model block by block, city by city, border by border. Flood the continent not just with buildings, but with builders. She stepped back, circled the last line 3 times. 72p a GE, "They thought I was building apartments," she said, voice low and electric. "But I'm building an army. Silence. Then Wekesa whispered, "Then let's train our soldiers." Ayanna dropped her pen. "We'll need space. Curriculums. Mentors." Kiptu finally stopped pacing. His grin returned, slow and mischievous. "Give me 2 weeks. I'll build a platform. Multi-language. Offline compatible. Free forever." Ayanna smiled, not like someone who just survived an attack, but like someone who had just declared war. She opened her notebook to a fresh page and wrote in bold letters, Phase 3, Ayanna Academy. We don't wait for systems. We become the system. 73p a GE Chapter 8. Ayanna apartments were no longer a whisper. They were a wave, a rolling, roaring, unstoppable current of brick, code, and courage. 6 months, just 6. 17 pilot blocks now stood proud. Across Nairobi, Kisumu, Nakuru, Mombasa, Kakamega, and even Lodwar, where the sun hit hardest and the hope had once run driest. Ayanna Academy had trained over 600 youth, many once written off as idle, lost, or slumborn. Now, they were solar engineers, biogas technicians, circular economy champions, TikTok, Twitter X, Insta, all buzzing like circuits overloaded with possibility. Time-lapses of homes rising from rubble. Testimonies from mothers who no longer cooked over smoke. A viral rap video titled From Ghetto to Grid, featuring estate kids dropping bars about voltage regulators and clean cooking gas. The world was watching. Global media showed up with cameras and curiosity. CNN called her Africa's housing hacker. BBC ran a segment, Ayanna Apartments, Can Innovation Replace Infrastructure? A German solar firm offered a partnership. The UN sent a delegation. But with fame came friction. Fault line 1, Kiptu once, he was the heartbeat of the circuitry. Ayanna would sketch. He'd code. She'd dream. He'd debug. 74p a GE, but lately, Kiptu was elsewhere. Not physically. His desk was still cluttered with wires and pizza crusts. But mentally, he was drifting into new orbits. His phone buzzed constantly. Investor pings, DM slides from founders in California and Cape Town, invites to disruptor summits and founders-only fireside chats. At first, Ayanna ignored it. Everyone was busy. Everyone was scaling. But then came the night she walked into the back room of their Mombasa site, meant for system calibration, and found Kiptu in front of a slick touchscreen display, demoing their proprietary microgrid logic to a small circle of sharply dressed strangers. Laptops open, notepads out, logos she didn't recognize, and Kiptu talking like a man pitching his own company. Low-cost, decentralized energy stack optimized for modular builds. It's plug-and-play for urban slums and fully API-compatible for post-build analytics. She stepped in, quiet but thunderous. "Who are they?" she asked. The room froze. One of the men smiled, teeth polished. "Just exploring synergies. Without the team," she asked Kiptu directly. He hesitated, then shrugged, eyes tired but defiant. "It's just a convo." Ayanna's face didn't flinch. "Feels like betrayal." A pause. Then Kiptu stood straighter. His voice dropped, laced with frustration that had clearly been growing. "You're turning this into a religion, Ayanna. I'm trying to make it scalable. There's a difference." The silence after was heavy. It wasn't just tension, it was tectonic. In that stillness, something cracked. Not loudly, not publicly, 75p a GE, but deep, like fault lines always do. Ayanna simply nodded, then left the room. And as the door closed behind her, she knew. Movements don't just face enemies from the outside. Sometimes, they erode from within. Fault line 2. Government eyes. It started with a letter marked urgent in thick, serif type. Then a black Prado at her doorstep. Then a quiet ride through Nairobi's leafy corridors, all the way to the gates of power. State House. No cameras, no press, just guards who stared too long, and corridors that smelled of old wood, new money, and quiet manipulation. The president wasn't in, but the man waiting for her in the mahogany-paneled briefing room wore the kind of tailored silence that said he didn't need a title. Just power. MS. Ayanna. A pleasure, he said, standing just enough to be polite, not enough to yield authority. "We love what you're doing." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Truly, you've captured hearts, built hope. Even the diaspora is talking about you." Ayanna nodded once, waited, then came the turn. "But you're disrupting too fast. Our national housing scheme is seeing tenant dropouts. Private developers are threatening litigation over unfair competition. You're destabilizing the market." Ayanna blinked. "I'm not destabilizing. I'm fixing it." The man leaned in, elbows on a document stamped top secret. His voice softened like poison in tea. 76p a GE. here's what we propose. Come on board as a senior advisor to the Ministry of Housing. We'll integrate your blueprint, nationalize it, give you a salary, maybe even a state honor. You'll have influence, a seat at the table. Translation, sell your soul. We'll bronze it. Ayanna didn't flinch. That's flattering, she said, with a smile sharp enough to slice cement. But my work is with the people, not behind closed doors. The man didn't smile back. Then don't be surprised, he said coldly, when your permits start getting delayed, when inspections fail, when partners pull out. It's not personal, it's just how the system protects itself. She stood slowly, adjusted her hoodie sleeve, and stared him in the eye. The system is scared, she said. That means we're close. And she walked out past the portraits, the protocol, and the power. Fault line 3. Zawadi, the Eastland superblock, was supposed to be their magnum opus. 300 fully off-grid units, greywater recycling, shared rooftop farms, community-run nurseries, a vertical revolution in sustainable urban living. Zawadi had poured herself into it, days without sleep, sketches that looked like symphonies in graphite. But then the absences began. Meetings missed, messages left on read, deadlines slipping through the cracks like sunlight between fingers. Ayanna knew something was wrong. So one evening, she climbed the stairs to the rooftop garden, her favorite place to think, Zawadi's favorite place to hide. And there she was, hunched over her sketchpad, the city lights blinking below like a distant constellation. Her pencil moved in slow, hesitant strokes. The girl who once drew like lightning now moved like she was tracing ghosts. 77p a G E Ayanna sat beside her without a word. Finally, Zawadi whispered, not looking up, they offered me a scholarship. Delft University. Full ride. 6 years. Ayanna's breath caught. Zawa, that's amazing. Yeah, she said, voice flat. But they want me to leave now. Like next month. A pause. Wind rustled blueprints pinned to planters. Somewhere below, the estate kids were laughing, chasing a football lit by solar floodlight. Zawadi turned to her, eyes glassy. I don't know if we'll still be here when I come back. If this will. Ayanna looked at her. Really looked. At the girl who once said, design isn't just shapes, it's a promise. At the sketches that gave their ideas bones. At her friend, her sister, her compass. She smiled softly. Go, she said. And when you come back, design cities with me. Zawadi nodded, biting her lip, then leaned in for a hug. They held each other in silence, arms wrapped around blueprints and memory and a million unsaid things. But as they let go, Ayanna felt it. Not a break, but a bend, like the shifting of an old building under new weight. Not the end of everything, but maybe the end of this. Fire in the papers, the smoke still clung to the air like a threat. 78p a G E Ayanna Apartments Block 2, Kakamga, a proud beacon of off-grid brilliance, now lay blackened and broken, its solar roof melted like wax, biogas tanks charred, garden plots turned to soot. The night before, the flames had risen like accusations. Neighbors said they saw masked men flee. The fire brigade came late. Too late. The fire marshal called it what everyone already knew: arson. No lives were lost, but something sacred had burned. By morning, the team was there, standing in the ruins. Wekesa walked the site like a storm on legs, fists clenched. Amina kept wiping her glasses, as if clarity would stop her hands from shaking. Zawadi was gone. Kiptu didn't show. Ayanna stood still at the center, boots in ash, blazer smelling of smoke, her eyes raw but unbroken. Journalists hovered at a distance. Drones buzzed overhead. The world was watching. She looked around at her shaken crew, at the families now homeless, at the children staring with wide, confused eyes. And she breathed in the destruction, then spoke. If we stop now, they win. Her voice didn't tremble. It carried. If we react with rage, they win. If we shrink, if we doubt, if we let fear write the next line, they win. She pointed to the ashes, not with defeat, but with resolve. So we rise. From this, she turned to her team. We rebuild. Bigger, smarter, together. Then she stepped aside and began picking up broken panels with her bare hands. 79p a GE one by one. The others followed. Amina called the architects. Wekesa found a clean spade. A small girl handed Ayanna a flower and whispered, "Don't give up." Ayanna smiled. Never. And as the evening sun set over the ruins, casting gold over blackened brick, someone spray painted on the only wall left standing. You burned the walls, not the idea. That night, Ayanna sat on a wooden stool in the temporary command post, an old container lit by a single solar lantern and her resolve. Her hoodie bore soot marks, her hands were blistered, her heart was burning hotter than the Kakamga ruins. She opened her phone, went live, no filters, no script, just truth. To those trying to stop us, listen closely. The camera trembled slightly, as if even the lens knew this was sacred. We are not a company. We are not a threat. We are a seed. And the harder you try to bury us, she leaned in, the deeper we grow. A pause. The comment section exploded. Speak Queen, crying in Mlolongo. Watching from Lagos. We feel you. Revolution in a hoodie. This isn't just about buildings. This isn't a housing project. This is a revolution. Of dignity. ADP a GE of design. Of defiance. Her voice cracked, but it didn't break. They torched our block. They thought it would scare us, but all they did was light a signal fire for the whole continent to see. She raised her hand. Calloused, charred, we will rebuild. In Kakamega, in Mombasa, in Kinshasa, in Kigali, we will build until no one in Africa has to beg for light. Then she smiled, slow, steady, bulletproof. You can't burn a dream, not one that's already been planted in so many of us. So if you believe, wherever you are, build something tomorrow. Small or big, build it, post it, tag it, #Ayanna Blueprint. She ended the stream. Millions had watched. Some cried, some clapped, some made plans, and all across Africa, beneath corrugated roofs and canvas tents, in townships and tech hubs, people began to whisper 5 words like a rising prayer. We build what they couldn't. 81p a GE Chapter 9, the Kigali air buzzed with ambition. A fleet of Teslas whispered down tarmacked roads. Solar flags rippled beside gleaming skyscrapers. Billboards blinked with slogans like Africa Innovates and Green is the New Gold. The African Union Innovation and Climate Resilience Summit was more than a conference. It was a declaration. Presidents, diplomats, billionaires, young coders in Converse, everywhere you turned. Tech demos, AI-powered food systems, hydrogen scooters, recycled water clothing, and in the center of it all, Ayanna Njeri, 24, black hoodie, headwrap threaded in copper silk, that caught the sun like it had been waiting for her scalp. She wasn't there to perform. She was there to reframe the future. The summit hall pulsed with light. Translators murmured in dozens of languages as she took the stage. No podium, just her voice and a wireless mic. She looked out at the room, then spoke. They said Africa needed to catch up, but the truth is, the world hasn't caught on. While others debate net zero by 2050, we're building homes that use no grid, no pipeline, no apology. Slide behind her, a photo of Kibra, the first Ayanna block, 82p a GE. In a world obsessed with vertical cities, we started horizontal revolutions, not just housing, dignity that regenerates itself. Waste becomes light, water comes from rain, and the rent, one price, no tokens, no corruption, no extortion. Pause. Somewhere in the back, a diplomat dropped his pen. This is not poverty innovation. It's post-colonial design. It's decolonized infrastructure. It's a continent saying, we won't wait to be saved. We're saving ourselves. Thunderous applause. Some stood, some wept, cameras flashed, hashtags exploded. #Ayanna Blueprint trended in 14 countries within an hour. But not everyone clapped. That evening, Kigali shimmered in gold and glass. Ayanna stood at the rooftop of the Summit Hotel, the city breathing beneath her like a circuit board lit from within. She had just made history. Her phone buzzed. Ayanna, there's a leak. Silence crackled louder than the skyline. What kind of leak? Code. Your code. Grid OS. Ayanna straightened, suddenly ice in her veins. What about it? It's live. On a Dubai site. Launched today. A luxury smart estate. The exact same system. Your code. Word for word. They even used your predictive battery calibration script. The wind slapped Ayanna's headwrap gently, but she barely felt it. Who had access? 83p a GE. Amina didn't hesitate. 4 people. You, me, Zawadi, Kiptu, and one of them's not answering. A silence more brutal than shouting stretched between them. Ayanna felt it before she could admit it. Kiptu, the boy with the gift of code and the curse of ambition, now unreachable. Her stomach coiled, not from surprise, from recognition. Amina's voice cracked with grief, dressed as fury. They didn't even change the UI. It's like they wanted us to see it. Ayanna had to cut short her stay at the summit for that day. Let's meet at Kiptu's apartment tomorrow morning. I'll be flying back this evening. Okay. Amina answered with a low voice. They found his apartment door slightly ajar. Inside, silence. Dust motes swirling like ghosts. No clothes, no notes, no crumbs of a goodbye. His laptop, the one coded with the heart of Ayanna Grid OS, was gone. The backup drive, still warm but wiped clean. Emails deleted. Git repositories scrubbed. Only a single sticky note left behind on the fridge. To build light, sometimes you walk into darkness alone. Wekesa stood by the kitchen doorway, fists clenched, face blank. He was family, he muttered. From the first bolt to the first panel, he was there. Ayanna picked up the note, reading it twice. He was scared, she said softly. Scared we were building something bigger than money. Bigger than him. Ayanna arrived minutes later with a tablet. Her face was thunder. 84p a GE. Bank activity confirms it. He wired everything to a UAE fintech wallet. Final withdrawal, yesterday. In dirhams, the words hit like bricks. Dubai. The code. The clean escape. The betrayal was no longer suspicion. It was a signature in flames. Ayanna walked to the window. The sun was rising over Nairobi, like it always had. He didn't just sell code, she murmured. He sold trust. No one spoke. In that room, something cracked. Not the mission, not the blueprint, but the innocence they'd once carried like a flag. We move forward, Ayanna said at last, but now we move with our eyes wide open. She folded the sticky note in half, pocketed it like evidence, and turned toward the door. Tomorrow, we rewrite the system, this time without ghosts. She boarded the evening flight to return to Kigali for the summit. Back at the summit it happened, when she least expected it, over grilled tilapia and hibiscus punch at the summit's final dinner. Ayanna was mid-conversation with a young engineer from Senegal, when a delegate from the African Union stood and tapped her wine glass. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, smiling toward her, please join me in congratulating Ayanna Njeri, who has just been nominated to chair the Pan-African Youth Tech Council. Applause erupted. Glasses clinked, cameras flashed, but Ayanna just blinked, her fork frozen midair. It's ceremonial for now, the delegate added, but with your momentum, it could become something real, something continental. A few at the table leaned in to congratulate her. A European tech rep offered her his card. A Namibian minister gave a slow nod of approval. 85p a GE, but Ayanna barely heard them. A council chair. She had come here to defend her grid system. Now she was being handed a seat at a table that could rewrite how tech, climate, and youth intersected across 55 nations. It was a lifeline, a megaphone, a chance to shape policy, standardize off-grid innovations, and protect Ayanna apartments from future sabotage. But also, more scrutiny, more politics, less toolshed, fewer field calls, another kind of power, yes, but one that might cost her the freedom that birthed the vision in the first place. That night, Ayanna sat alone on the rooftop of the Summit Hotel. The Kigali skyline pulsed softly beneath her. Clean lines, green lights, a city that looked like tomorrow. Her phone buzzed and glowed nonstop. Congratulations from donors, invites to round tables, requests to keynote 3 other summits, a new message from Zawadi. Heard about the council. Big love. I'm sketching floating villages on a river island in Amsterdam. Let's talk soon. You're becoming a continent. Ayanna smiled faintly, but beneath the smile, a strange weight settled in her chest, the same feeling she'd had years ago. Her first night in Ridgeview Dorm C. A silence too clean, a room too polished, a dream that suddenly felt too big to carry. She looked out over Kigali, over Africa, over everything her vision had touched and threatened. I'm no longer just building apartments, she thought. I'm becoming infrastructure, not just a spark now. She was the grid, 86p a GE back in Nairobi. The flames had tried, but they'd only made the blueprint louder. By the time Ayanna returned to Nairobi, the charred remains of Kakamega Block 2 were already gone, cleared, leveled, and in their place, something new stood. Not just rebuilt, reborn. Ayanna had moved like a general with a cause. She'd rallied graduates of Ayanna Academy, youth once written off by the same system that now feared their brilliance. Brick by brick, wire by wire, they transformed the wreckage into something bigger than the original plan. The Kakamega Memorial Hub, part apartment block, part training institute, part war cry, where smoke had once curled into the sky, now stood solar shingles gleaming like armor. Wind turbines spun on the roof like defiant fists. Gray water tanks gurgled with purpose. A new microgrid hummed quietly beneath the walls. Smarter, harder to hack, immune to sabotage. In the courtyard stood a tree, young, stubborn, growing fast. Beneath it a plaque read, in memory of resistance, in honor of resilience. And carved in radiant green-lit letters across the front wall, powered by the very sunlight the arsonists tried to silence, you can't burn the blueprint. The grand opening was half rally, half resurrection. Children wore t-shirts reading Builders of the Grid. Mothers cried. Fathers filmed on their phones. Elders gave speeches under umbrellas. Ayanna stood near the back, hood up, arms crossed, watching, not leading. Not today. This was their moment. 87p a GE, and that, she realized, was the point. It was no longer just her blueprint. It was theirs. And you can't burn that. Not anymore. The betrayal from Kiptu had cut deep, but instead of bleeding, Ayanna coded. For weeks, she and Wekesa holed up in a bare-walled container office, stacked with wires, power banks, and half-drunk mugs of kahawa. Rain tapped the tin roof. Deadlines loomed, but they were silent soldiers, rebuilding what the world tried to steal. They called it Grid OS 2, 0. Stronger, smarter, unstealable. No more fragile central servers. No more single points of failure. They rebuilt the energy management system on a decentralized mesh. Nodes that could talk to each other, even if one went dark. Think blockchain, but for buildings. Think light that couldn't be hijacked. Every apartment now had its own brain, a microcontroller embedded with the new code. Each block could operate fully independently, share power with neighbors, or run solo like a digital island. Most radical of all, they made it open source. Anyone could download it, tweak it, improve it, remix it for the coast, the desert, the hills, the valleys. They published manuals in Sheng, Swahili, French, Amharic, Yoruba. This wasn't about Ayanna anymore. We don't just replicate. Ayanna told a packed hall of youth leaders at a regional housing summit. We decentralize. Let every town become its own Ayanna. No more waiting for heroes. No more messiah models. Just blueprints in the hands of the bold. 88p a GE across the continent. The shift began. In Kibra, teens rebuilt their power grid after a transformer blew, without calling Kenya power. In Tamale, Ghana, a community launched Nyumbani Naija, a modified system adapted for West African heat waves. In Lusaka, a retired teacher-turned-engineer used Grid OS 2, 0 to run a library and water pump. The dream was no longer a building. It was a virus of light, spreading, irreversible. Nairobi, dusty sun, soft wind, a city that once felt like chaos, now hummed, with something closer to possibility. Ayanna stood in the heart of Kibra, inside the very first Ayanna apartment block. The original pilot, the one they'd built with scrap, sweat, and something divine. But it was no longer just a building. The floors had been repolished, walls painted with murals of sunbursts and circuit lines. Solar panels still crowned the rooftop like a crown, but inside, the space had changed. It was now a living museum. School kids came in waves, guided by alumni of Ayanna Academy. Tourists clicked photos. Reporters still asked about the girl who started it all. But the tenants, they just lived, peacefully, with dignity. Water on tap, gas from banana peels, lights that never lied. Ayanna walked slowly through the rooms, fingertips brushing the familiar door frames. The air carried smells of ugali, lavender detergent, and something new. Legacy. Then a voice. "Excuse me, are you the girl who built the lights?" Ayanna turned. A young girl, maybe 10, braids fraying, eyes fierce. She clutched a notebook, filled with messy circuit doodles and dreams that hadn't yet been doubted. 89p a GE. Ayanna knelt, smiling. "No," she said. "We built the lights." The girl tilted her head. "We," Ayanna pointed to the walls. To Kiptu who coded, Zawadi who drew, Wekesa who welded, Amina who fought, my mama who prayed, and the people, always the people. The girl's grin widened. "I want to build lights too." Ayanna reached into her sling bag and pulled out something small, a palm-sized mini toolkit labeled Starter Kit Ayanna Academy Junior. She placed it gently in the girl's hands. "Then you're already one of us." The girl clutched it like treasure. From the doorway, sunlight spilled in like a slow blessing. Outside, the estate buzzed with life. Mutura sizzling, kids laughing, tuk-tuks weaving. But what stood out most were the lights. Street by street, block by block, not from some distant, unreliable grid, but from rooftops, from algae tanks, from wind, from waste, from the people. Ayanna stepped outside, hoodie pulled tight against the evening breeze. She looked up. Across the skyline, panels glittered like stars pulled down to earth. Across the estate, the lights had come on, not with a surge, but with a chorus. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered, not as a founder, not as a hero, but as a girl who never stopped sketching. "We don't wait for rescue. We become the power." 90p a GE. 91p a GE. Chapter 10, they didn't call it fame. They didn't call it success. They called it the Ayanna effect, not just because she had built something, but because she had unleashed something. A way of seeing, a way of doing, a way of saying, what if the future was ours to wire? In Ghana, a youth collective in Kumasi converted an abandoned football field into a cluster of sun hubs, modular learning pods powered by Ayanna's open-source Grid OS 2. Zero. Children now coded under solar lights, streamed global lectures, and charged phones using panels salvaged from scrapyards. In Malawi, elders and teenagers came together in a village outside Blantyre to form the Mbale Co-op, a women-led biofuel project turning cassava waste into cooking gas. They credited a YouTube video from Ayanna Academy for the blueprint. Their slogan, "From Roots, We Rise." In Sudan, aid workers partnered with former Ayanna trainees to install solar-powered water filters in refugee camps. For the first time in months, clean water flowed without waiting for trucks. A small boy held a cup to the spout and whispered, "It tastes like light." In Johannesburg, street artists turned infrastructure into canvas. They painted Ayanna's face beside Mandela and Biko, her braids coiled into solar panels, her hoodie stitched with circuit paths. Underneath, in bright graffiti, "We are our own rescue." 92p. Her name wasn't a hashtag anymore. It was a curriculum, a movement, a quiet revolution encoded in kilowatts and courage. Every week, another country emailed. Every month, another blueprint was downloaded. Every day, someone somewhere flipped a switch and lit up not just a bulb, but belief. And the African Union took notice. The African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa gleamed like a future waiting to be written. A circular hall of flags, mahogany desks, echoes of ancestral dreams, and bureaucratic caution. Ayanna stood at the center in a midnight blue chiton suit, solar-threaded embroidery flickering faintly under the lights. Her braids were wrapped in a gold-dusted scarf. Beside her, a digital mock-up of the Pan-African Living Grid, a decentralized housing blueprint that could light up every corner of the continent without asking permission from the past. Before her sat a half-moon of power, presidents in tailored silence, ministers flipping through binders, tech advisors with Bluetooth earpieces, old revolutionaries with tired eyes, hungry for proof. One delegate from North Africa cleared his throat first. "You built what our departments couldn't. Your impact is undeniable." Another, from Southern Africa, adjusted his tie. "But the model is spreading too fast, too loose. We need frameworks, oversight, governance." A West African minister added, "You've inspired a generation, but if we're to adopt this at scale, it must flow through official channels." Ayanna didn't flinch. She leaned forward and tapped the screen behind her, revealing a map glowing with Ayanna apartments in Ghana, Kenya, Tunisia, DRC, Mozambique, even Djibouti. 93p. She spoke slowly, clearly, like someone who had built truth with her own hands. "You want to govern the grid. I understand. But you cannot govern dignity. You can't regulate hunger away. You can't legislate light into homes that were forgotten for decades. What you can do, what I ask you to do, is invest in sovereignty at the smallest level. A family with its own switch, a youth with their own toolkit, a mother who never again boils water in the dark." The hall went quiet. One elderly president leaned back, murmured, "Reminds me of Sankara." Another smiled but said nothing, calculating. And then a ripple of applause. Not thunderous, not defiant, but cautious, political. A show of support wrapped in the silks of suspicion. Because Ayanna hadn't just pitched a project. She'd pitched power redistribution. And everyone in that room knew. That's the one thing governments don't give up easily. Later, as she walked through the glass corridor lined with flags, a youth delegate from Sierra Leone caught up with her, eyes wide. "You said what we've all been thinking," he whispered. "But you said it." In front of them, Ayanna just smiled. "It's not bravery if you're the only one with a mic. It's just speaking the obvious louder." They didn't ask her in public, not in the grand chamber, with cameras and applause. No, they waited until the wine had been poured, the gala had dimmed, and the rooftop breeze in Addis whispered secrets only the powerful hear. 94p. A private suite. Glass walls overlooking the city, the kind of place where history is edited, not made. 3 officials, 1 offer, 2 choices. The youngest, wearing a continental lapel pin and a warm rehearsed smile, began. "Ayanna, we see your brilliance. The continent sees it, and we want to honor it with scale, with structure, with longevity." He slid 2 folders across the mahogany table. Option 1, Government Partnership Title, Continental Energy and Housing Advisor, African Union. Budget, $10 billion Rollout Fund. Scope, 54 countries. Pilot to national conversion. Power to hire, Approved Tech Guide Strategy. Strings, Policy Committees. Approval Boards, Parliamentary Reviews. Red tape dressed like ribbon. "You'll be the face," he said. The architect, the woman who lit up Africa. But Ayanna had read enough to know, real fire spreads faster when it's ungoverned. She opened the second folder. Option 2, Licensing buyout takes over Grid OS, Ayanna Apartments, the full living grid blueprint. She gets lifetime funding for Ayanna Academy and global ambassador status for innovation and sustainability. She could write books, give TED talks, teach, inspire, step back from the machine, let it run without her. And this path, a senior delegate added, lets you rest. You've done enough, Ayanna. Let others take it from here. That word, rest, it felt like a velvet rope around her neck. 95p a GE Ayanna looked out the window. The lights of Addis glowed like constellations trapped in concrete. Both options glittered. Both were power. Both were compromise. And just as she was about to speak, the twist. It started with a ping, then a second, then 20. A leaked video was going viral. Kiptu, standing on a polished stage in Dubai under crystalline lights, wearing a suit that didn't know the word toolshed. The TED-style banner behind him read, Solar Sage Global, revolutionizing energy access for emerging markets. He spoke like a prophet of profit. What Africa needs is not charity, he said, pacing with the swagger of someone who had discovered fire. It needs efficiency, scalable systems, smart monetization. I didn't betray Ayanna. I outgrew her. The audience laughed, then applauded, then stood. Investors swarmed him after the talk, business cards flying, smiles sharp as checks. And the final blow. On screen flashed the Solar Sage model, glossy white micro apartments. No murals, no gardens, no communal space. A sterilized replica of Ayanna Apartments, detached from affordability, stripped of community ownership, rebranded as innovation. Ayanna watched the clip alone in the room. No one else dared speak. She didn't shout, didn't cry. She just rewound the clip, watched it again, and then whispered, mostly to herself, they've turned a lifeboat into a luxury yacht. They're trying to make my dream convenient. I'm trying to make it contagious. 96p a GE while the spotlight flared elsewhere. Dubai stages, summits, whisper rooms of power. Ayanna held the line. Not with noise, not with fire, but with an iron will and a clipboard that could command armies. She wasn't just running logistics anymore. She was reweaving the fabric of the movement. When a shady developer in Eldoret plastered fake Ayanna Apartments coming soon posters across an empty plot and tried charging locals reservation fees, the community snapped. Protests surged, frustration rising like steam. But Ayanna didn't call the police. She called a community tribunal. Under a mango tree and a flapping tarpaulin roof, she gathered elders, youth reps, tenant leaders, and estate mamas. With calm precision, she laid out timelines, permits, blueprints, then let the people speak. By sundown, the fraudster had been exposed and shamed, not by riot, but by reason. When flash floods hit Kisumu, tearing through tin-roofed estates and leaving families knee-deep in mud, Ayanna didn't panic. She opened her war chest, a WhatsApp group of Ayanna Academy alumni trained in rapid deployment. Within 24 hours, rooftop gardens were reinforced to double as drainage systems. Solar power units were repositioned above floodlines. Community shelters lit up with clean water, warmth, and Wi-Fi. She even coordinated drone deliveries of chlorine tablets and food packs. No one asked her to. She just did it. One hot afternoon, back at the Nairobi hub, Wekesa watched her rally a new batch of volunteers. Half of them fresh from high school, the other half grandmothers in gumboots. She handed out gloves with one hand, resolved a budget hiccup with the other, and somehow still found time to hug a shy new trainee who had never held a screwdriver before. All that time while he was watching her, he was in a video call with Ayanna. Ayanna was also seeing everything. He turned to Ayanna, respect written all over his sun-creased face. You taught her how to lead, he said, and she's teaching us how to last. 97p a GE Ayanna looked across the courtyard where Ayanna was laughing with the newcomers, a clipboard in her hand, a hammer slung in her belt like a crown. She smiled. That's the whole point, she said softly. I wasn't building a company. I was planting leaders. And in that moment, the revolution didn't feel like hers anymore. It felt like everyone's. Back in Nairobi, the sun dipped low over the Kibra rooftops, painting the sky with streaks of orange and resilience. Ayanna sat alone on a splintered bench just outside the original pilot block, the place where it had all begun. Around her, life hummed. Children giggled on solar-lit swings, their laughter cutting through the late afternoon like wind chimes. A group of teenage girls, fresh from Ayanna Academy, tested sensors on a rainwater system nearby. A father watered spinach on a rooftop farm, his daughter beside him humming while holding a small spade. The air smelled like soil and sunshine and something sacred, possibility. Ayanna closed her eyes for a beat and thought of her mother, who had once sold Sukuma Wiki so Ayanna could become someone in future. Of Zawadi, in Amsterdam now, drawing floating eco-villages and sending voice notes that still sounded like home. Of Kiptu, the brother who chose mirrors over movement, who forgot the dream wasn't about who invented it, but who needed it most. Of the millions still in darkness, and the thousands already planting light. Then she opened her eyes, took a breath, pulled out her phone, 98p a GE, dialed the African Union. The voice on the other end was calm, bureaucratic, expectant. Yes, MS. And Jerry? Ayanna stood, looking up at the sky, where birds cut clean lines across a fading sun. I'll partner, she said, but not for power. For people, every apartment must be community-owned. No top-down control, no foreign conglomerates hiding behind African names. Every student must access the full curriculum, free, in every language, online and offline, and every nation in this partnership must sign a charter promising not to profit from sustainability, but to protect it. Silence, the kind that holds its breath. Then came the voice again, a little shaken, a little impressed. You're impossible. Ayanna smiled gently. Not cocky, not cold, just rooted. I'm Ayanna. And before they could reply, she hung up. Behind her, a solar light flicked on. In front of her, a girl on the swing shouted, Ayanna, look, I made a fan that spins in the sun. Ayanna laughed, walked over, and high-fived her, then turned to the skyline. The city didn't look broken anymore. It looked unfinished. And she was just getting started. The ocean wind swept through Dakar like a drum roll from the ancestors. 99p a GE flags of 12 African nations rippled against a cobalt sky. Below them, a vast open-air amphitheater buzzed with voices, from ministers in tailored linen to barefoot youth leaders with solar dust still under their nails. In the center stood Ayanna, no longer just an innovator, not merely a symbol. She was infrastructure now. Culture, code. Amina stood beside her, regal in chitinge and resolve. Wekesa was in the front row, hands calloused, eyes misty. Zawadi joined via livestream from a bright, plant-filled studio in Delft, her curls haloed by blueprints taped to the wall. The moment was historic. Behind them, a towering screen flickered to life with the title, The Ayanna Accord a Pan-African Charter for Youth-Led Infrastructure, Climate Justice, and Decentralized Innovation. 12 digital pens signed live on screen Ghana, Kenya, Senegal, Rwanda, Nigeria, Malawi, Botswana, Tanzania, Ethiopia, South Africa, Uganda, Namibia. 12 governments had chosen to back open-source blueprints, youth-owned energy startups, community-first housing mandates. Ayanna stepped to the mic. The crowd quieted like a held breath. She held the blueprint binder, the same one she'd carried since the first pilot in Kibra. Its pages were creased, stained, worn like scripture. She raised it above her head, not as a CEO, not as a celebrity, but as a citizen of a dreaming continent. This isn't the end of a journey, she said, her voice carrying like light. It's the beginning of a movement. We are the children of neighborhoods the world never mapped, of estates where lights flickered only when bribes were paid, of rooftops that leaked and classrooms that echoed with hunger. 100p a GE. But we didn't wait for rescue. We built prototypes, we built systems, we built each other. Thunderous applause. She paused, looked out at the crowd, locking eyes with a girl in the front row holding a toolkit just like the one she once gave away. We are not waiting for the world to wake up, Ayanna said. We are rebuilding it from the ground up. The crowd rose like a wave. Flags lifted, hands clapped and ululated. Some wept, some just whispered her name, like a drumbeat of belief. Ayanna, Ayanna, Ayanna. And above it all, the sun broke through the clouds, soft and defiant, as if even the sky had been waiting for this day. 101p, a GE Chapter 11 10 years later. The wind over Turkana wasn't lonely anymore. It danced between sleek solar-paneled apartments, wound through spinning wind turbines, and brushed gently against rooftop farms bursting with kale, flowers, and hope. Once a cracked silence stretched across this land. Now, laughter's learning light. Inside Unit 3B, a young girl named Malaika, age 12, stood in her school uniform, cue cards clutched tight. Her solar-powered tablet connected to the community projector with a soft beep. Family, neighbors, and 2 curious toddlers gathered around. Today, I want to tell you about someone you probably think is just a name on a wall. Ayanna, not the building, not the company, the girl. The blueprint, she clicked. The projector lit up with a black and white image of young Ayanna, in a hoodie, standing beside a model made of scrap metal and hope, eyes fierce with belief. The room chuckled. Malika smiled, then continued. She grew up in Nairobi, in a place where rent was high and lights were usually off, where water came in promises and power came with bribes, where hope was scarce, but Ayanna wasn't. She didn't wait for help. She became it. Next slide. A short time-lapse, locally sourced materials turning into smart homes, children painting murals, solar arrays rising like flowers toward the sky. She built homes that made power from sunlight, gas from garbage, and clean water from rooftops. 102p a GE, but more than that. She taught us something no textbook could, that it's not just about living off-grid. It's about living on mission. The next slide was interactive, a map of Africa glowing with golden stars. Each one, a community powered by the Ayanna grid. This isn't just a house I live in, Malika said, her voice steady. It's part of a bigger idea. That homes should fight for you. That dignity should come with a front door key. That every child, no matter how dusty their road is, deserves light. Outside, wind turbines thrummed softly. Her last slide, Ayanna in her 20s, standing beside a mural that read, "We don't wait for rescue. We become the power." The room fell silent. Then a classmate raised his hand, wide-eyed. "Is she still alive?" Malika nodded. "She doesn't like speeches anymore, but she still walks among the blocks, still dreaming." Just then, the power flickered slightly, but it came back, because this time, the light didn't come from the grid. It came from the ground beneath them, from the waste they reused, from the sky above, and most of all, from an idea strong enough to survive blackouts, betrayal, and time. Malika turned off the projector. Outside, the Turkana sun shone on the rooftops like a promise, and somewhere far away, a woman in a hoodie smiled quietly, watching the next builders rise. Ayanna, age 34, no title before her name, no headlines chasing her steps, no boardrooms, cameras, or chaos. 103p a GE, just a quiet home tucked into the hills outside Mbale, where morning mist rolls through banana trees, and the air smells of soil, lemongrass, and something sacred. Her house is humble, clay brick walls, a tin roof patched with care, solar panels blooming like metallic sunflowers on the back fence. Permaculture gardens sprawl all around, planted in wild swirls of greens and herbs. Goats nibble nearby, their bells soft as wind chimes. Inside, scribbled notebooks, stacked tools, a whiteboard covered in ideas no one has seen yet. Ayanna sits on a simple chair, a mug of sweet tea in hand. In front of her, a bamboo-framed screen beams with soft blue light, tuned to the people grid, Africa's shared, decentralized mesh network. The stream loads, and there's Malika, braided hair, cue cards, beaming with conviction. Ayanna watches. She smiles when Malika misquotes her. "We don't live off-grid, we live on purpose." It becomes "we live on mission." She chuckles, shakes her head. The goats grunt in agreement, but when the girl ends with, "Ayanna didn't just build houses, she built a way to hope, a way to live free, a way to never be left behind," Ayanna goes still. Outside, a breeze rustles the cassava leaves. Somewhere in the distance, a neighborhood solar chime rings. The present bows briefly to the past. She exhales, slow and full. "That's the whole thing," she whispers. "That's all I ever wanted." She doesn't post, doesn't comment, doesn't call. Instead, she walks outside, on the warm Mbale earth, picks up a spade, and turns the soil for tomorrow's compost trench. In the garden, a group of children from the village are already there, waiting for her, tools in hand, ready to learn. Ayanna looks up at them. Her voice is calm as rain. 104p a GE so. "Who's ready to build?" They raise their hands, and far across the continent, the lights continue to flicker on. That evening, as the sun lowers like a slow exhale, Ayanna walks to the top of a familiar hill, red soil warm beneath her feet, the kind that stains your soles and stays there, like memory. She stands alone, but not lonely. Below her, a living skyline, not of glass and greed, but of grit and grace. Rooftops shimmer with solar glass, catching the last light like the future's mirror. Water towers hum softly, drawing from boreholes, feeding gardens instead of greed. Laughter lifts from alleyways. Children chase wind with kites stitched from old campaign posters and recycled cloth. "Vote for so-and-so," now scrawled over with stars and suns, and the word hope in messy crayon strokes. Ayanna smiles. Her hands are rougher, her voice quieter, but her roots, deeper than ever. She sits on a rock and exhales, watching the sun sink behind a city she once dared to reimagine. now rising because others dared too. She's no longer the symbol, no longer the spark. She's the soil, the seed, the silence that lets others speak. And as the breeze brushes her face and the solar lights below flicker on, not from one grid, but thousands of small ones, lit by hands that learned from hers, Ayanna whispers, not for anyone to hear. Good, now grow without me. 105p a GE, the letters still arrive, not in envelopes but in light. Scanned, transmitted, carried over solar-powered relays, and the people grid's open mesh, humming with voices from every corner of the continent. They flash gently on Ayanna's screen each week, like constellations of gratitude. A 14-year-old girl in Rwanda, writing in French and Kinyarwanda, describes building floating classrooms on Lake Kivu, powered by mini-turbines and anchored in learning. An elderly woman in Togo shares a photo. 3 grandkids curled together in the glow of an Ayanna apartment unit, video calling her from miles away. We talk every night now, she writes, and when they say they love me, the line never cuts. A message from Zawadi, now designing low-gravity settlements in coastal Senegal, where floods used to swallow villages. We've begun the first sky village. Your name's on every beam. Ayanna reads them at dawn, as dew clings to the leaves outside her quiet Mbale home. Then she replies, not long, not dramatic, just enough. I won't come yet, I'm still planting here. But remember this, we were never building apartments. We were building inheritance. She taps send, leans back, watches the sun rise over land still dreaming. And somewhere, a rooftop garden catches the light. That night, across a stretch of the old national grid, the lights go out, a hum dies, screens flicker black, generators cough to life in government offices. The silence of dependency returns. But in every corner where Ayanna's blueprint took root, the lights stay on. 106p a GE in Turkana. A girl finishes her homework beneath a solar lantern shaped like a star. In Kibra, a grandmother brews tea with biogas as her grandchild livestreams a lullaby. In Eldoret, a youth training center pulses with music, code, and ambition. Above it all, the wind carries a sound, not loud but undeniable. Not static, not silence, but a hum, the future whispering, power to the people, forever. And in that hum deep in the desert wind, woven into rooftops, murals, and memories, Ayanna lives on. The end,